What's up, party people, and welcome to episode 100 of Countdown to Classic. This is a podcast that has educated, informed, and gossiped to you 100 times over the past 14 months about World of Warcraft Classic. Each week we discuss the news, hot button issues, and content of the highly anticipated Classic servers. I'm your host, Josh Corbett, and this is a show where, as many of you know by now, say it with me, it's not my opinion on World of Warcraft that counts, but yours. But after 100 episodes, my opinion has maybe leveled up to at least level 10. So I've got my first talent point and shall be spending it on the entertainment spec. If you're new to the show, Countdown to Classic is all about you, the listener, as we hear your expert input on everything relating to the upcoming release of World of Warcraft Classic. I honestly am shocked and humbled to be sitting here reading out that intro for the 100th time. What a ride it's been with all of you, and what a journey it's been watching the show and community grow at such an exponential rate since episode number 1. Now, we've got a lot of great stuff in store for you today. We'll be starting off with an absolute orgy of a call that I took with 10 of us on the line to celebrate the Classic and Countdown communities for this 100th episode, which discusses the journey that many of us have been on from Nostalrius to Classic. After that, I've got a bit of fun lined up as I wind up choosing the region that I'll be playing Classic on via a fun dating game with some Oceanic and North American suitors that gets a little hot and heavy. As many of you know, I have been wrestling with that decision a lot lately, so this episode will settle that issue once and for all. Next, we'll hear from Kevin Jordan all about the design of Paladins, and finally we'll talk to a guild that puts the hard in hardcore as I sit down with members of the guild Onslaught about their plans for Classic. But just before we get to that, given that we have hit the milestone of episode 100, I just want to reiterate the things that were said in the show's first birthday show recently. This show would not exist without you. Yes, you listening to this podcast right now. Countdown is very much so a show made by the community for the community. And without what is now about 10,000 dedicated listeners, bringing in what is tracking for about 70,000 unique downloads this month, almost 2,000 Discord members, dozens upon dozens of callers, and financial supporters who dig into their pockets every month to keep the show going, without all of you, the show simply would not be here. And so, once again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you and congratulations to all of you. We made it to 100 episodes, and I hope that there are many more to come. So as you've heard many times before, you all know the drill by now. This is a community-based podcast. So if you like what you're hearing, please join the Discord now. It is absolutely blowing up. Everyone's coming over and wishing that they'd got in there earlier. Please come and have a chat with us and have some fun with us there. Keep the conversations going. Follow me on Twitter. I'd love to see more of you follow me on Twitter and say hi to you all. Counts2Classic with the number 2. That's where you can find me. Or email me at feedback@countdowntoclassic.com if you'd like to call into the show, make a suggestion, or just say hi. Everything you'll need is in the show notes for each episode, along with the show's Patreon link. Everyone, please do look into the Patreon page and see if there's any way that you'd possibly be interested in supporting the show over there. Every little bit does count, and I really, really appreciate it. But if subscriptions aren't your thing, then you can help keep the lights on at Countdown by checking out the show's tip jar over at Ko-Fi. It's like buying me a beer, so that's that option for other people. There's also the show's merch store with some great designs over there, so please check that out. We've got some new stuff up there. It's really, really cool, guys. I guarantee you'll probably want something over there at the merch store. So check it out for t-shirts, hoodies, coffee mugs, all that. Be sure to check that out. And finally, just a reminder, the Countdown to Classic Guild is recruiting and going through the rostering phase soon. No matter what region you're playing on, head on over to the Countdown to Classic Discord to get more information on our plans for Classic. And we need more Hordes, so come on, Loktar Ogar people, we need you. But with all that said, let's start the show with Calling Countdown. All right, it's time for an incredibly special Countdown to Classic call. The episode, as you've probably heard from the intro, turns 100 today. 100 episodes of the show. I honestly can say that I didn't think we'd make it here. When I started the show, I did it as a little bit of a laugh, and it's just become something else entirely. I'm very happy with being here with you all where we are now. And in celebration of that, I've organized for as we colloquially refer to it in Australia, a shitload of callers are in on this call to sort of celebrate where we've come as a community and also to reflect on where the community has come from the last 18 months since Classic was obviously announced at BlizzCon in 2017. So let me go through this absolute murderer's row of callers. We've got like 10 of us here. It's going to be crazy. I'm really looking forward to this call. Now, I'll just go through you all alphabetically. Ale, how are you, mate?
I'm doing fantastic. Super glad to be here.
Great to have you. Bat Lord, how are you, mate?
I'm doing great, Josh. It's so great to be part of this call. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing well, Josh. Glad to be here.
Gutter, first time caller. So happy to have you here for this one.
Yeah, man. Really glad to be here. Thanks again for having me.
Jacoby, how are you, mate? Good to see you again.
Fantastic. Just finished a long day of work, but this is a great way to end the shift. Happy to be here.
It definitely should be. Locked, mate, your second call of the day, your third of the last 2 weeks. You're a fucking trooper. Thanks for being here.
No problems. I'm on a bit of a roll. Let the chaos begin.
And Solveig, someone I've been dying to meet, and it's so great to finally talk to you. Obviously, you run the great Oceanic Discord. It's great to have you here, mate.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, pretty good to be here, and good to meet you.
Absolutely. And Theloras, another regular, our resident Paladin expert. So great to have you here.
Thanks, man. My nether bits are tingling.
As are mine. And we're going to be joined very soon. Actually, he's just jumped in right now as we speak. Tim, Tian SG, how are you, mate? It's so good to have you here.
Good, man. Good to be here. Woohoo, 100th.
I know, I can't believe it. Look, guys, let's get into it. And look, this is going to be an absolute, special call. It's going to be absolute mayhem. Everyone's going to jump in when they can, but we'll try and sort of keep it as orderly as we can as well at the same time, but we'll get all of you heard from. Now, what I wanted to do is to sort of reflect, as I said, on where we've come from as a community, as a Classic community in relation to the announcement of this game. Now, a funny thing happened the other day where I saw that the announcement that it had been 3 years since Nostalrius was shut down. I didn't play Nostalrius, and it sort of shocked me. I was like, wow, that sort of is and is not a long time ago. Like, I can't believe 3 years have passed since then. I didn't play Nostalrius, but I remember hearing about it shutting down. And now here we are only a few months away from the release of World of Warcraft Classic being the official servers. So a lot has happened over the last 3 years, and Ale, I might get you to sort of get the ball rolling, and then the rest of this mob will pick up from what you say. But tell us about how you feel about the last 3 years and from that shutdown moment of Nostalrius to where we are now.
Well, it's absolutely incredible. For me, that was the impetus really to start getting involved in this whole community. And I had no idea about the Classic scene until I heard about, the waves that the Nostalrius shutdown had created. And that actually caused me to become involved in the community.
Did anyone here actually play Nostalrius?
I did, yeah. I leveled 2 characters to 60 on Nostalrius.
Right.
It was a lot of time investment. I was absolutely fucking gutted when they were shutting down Nostalrius. I was one of those people that was in Orgrimmar, and I was like, no, Nostalrius, why?
Well, Mike, we'll start with you, and I think one or two others mentioned that they played it as well, so we'll get them to answer once you're done. But Mike, talk to us just very briefly about the time that you had on Nostalrius and why you were so upset.
I think it was just how tight-knit, but also how big the classic community really turned out to be. How many people, before I played Nostalrius, I had no clue, this many people actually, enjoyed vanilla WoW. It had been so long, I had never even knew private servers were a thing. Honestly, before Nostalrius. I heard about Nostalrius. I'm like, I played vanilla WoW back then, but I was 9 fucking years old. But I'm like, I want to try to play this game again. And I had spent so much time just investing in I leveled a warrior and a rogue to 60. And just when Nostalrius announced that they were shutting down their servers because of a
cease and desist.
The cease and desist from Blizzard. I was gutted. I was ready to riot in the streets, to be honest.
A couple more of you piped up and said that you played Nostalrius. I'm not sure who it was, but I'll throw it to the first one of you, whoever that was, and just let us know how you felt and the time investment that you put into. I mean, I know a lot of people might get rubbed the wrong way about, Josh, don't glorify the private servers, but it is kind of the reason why we're here now. So who spent some time on Nostalrius?
The only reason, Josh.
Well, there you go.
The only reason.
There you go. A lot of people do say that.
And, people have been giving me shit. Oh, it's on the forums. Blizzard would have come to the conclusion anyway. No, they fucking wouldn't. I mean, just think about it. Like Activision Blizzard, a multi-billion-dollar company, was basically forced to completely change their tune only because of the player base. How often does that happen? That was pretty insane. Now, you got to remember, private servers have been around in various incantations since day one of even vanilla. I mean, they were all bugged to hell and gone. But I mean, I myself originally started playing on a private server back on Phoenix around 2011. And that was bugged to hell. And Nostalrius was a breath of fresh air because Phoenix was so corrupt. I ended up getting permanently banned because I told the lead admin to go fuck himself.
That'll do it.
That'll do it. That'll do it.
It was also the first server that was close to Blizz-like.
Yeah, true.
It
was bugged. It was really bad. But
no, I'm talking about Nostalrius. I'm talking about Nostalrius.
It was
closer.
But I mean,
well, that's obviously part of the reason why people, were so happy. We move on to a moment where, unfortunately, Nostalrius gets shut down. Some of you have mentioned, obviously, that you played there. But, then we get this absence of space, if you will. So we're still some time away from the official announcement in late 2017 of the classic servers. And I'll jump to you other guys here. And whether or not, you don't have to have played on Nostalrius to have realized that we were living in somewhat of a void where, vanilla WoW was not officially available and you were just left to whatever private servers were available, whether or not you chose go down those sort of illegal waters, if you will. But Solveig, I might ask you, mate, and get some other people who we haven't heard from yet to piggyback off of what you say. How did you feel about that, let's say that 1 year leading up to the announcement of World of Warcraft Classic post the shutdown of Nostalrius?
I was a bit devastated. I mean, I did play on Nostalrius. I got to 60 on a warrior and raided into Blackwing Lair. So the shutdown was a bit of a letdown, definitely for me, not being able to sort of progress further and play the rest of the game like I kind of anticipated. So, ended up having to kind of do a bit of a soul search, try and find an MMO that kind of kept me entertained and amused for a while. And I think I found that in Black Desert, but it was definitely a bit of a sad period not having World of Warcraft, which was kind of my home. Available.
Because keep in mind, Anchorage was literally about to open.
Right.
Yeah, it was so close.
Yeah,
it was like a week or two away from AQ40 and AQ20 opening up.
I remember grinding for the war effort.
No, I know. And my guild that I was raiding with, we had literally for the first time finally progressed and killed Nefarian like the week before. And we were so stoked about AQ. And then we're like, oh, shit.
Tim, I might get you to jump in at this point and just ask, I'm not sure if you did, I don't think you played Nostalrius, but were you one of those people who sort of only upon the announcement of World of Warcraft Classic, was that when you became awakened to, holy shit, this is a thing? Or were you quite cognizant of the scene before that?
I've been around for a little while. I think I started in 2015 because my buddy had got me to play the EQ private server, P9. And if nobody's played an EQ before, it's rough. But it made me go, I wonder if something like this exists for World of Warcraft, which then I stumbled upon. I didn't play Phoenix. I played something called Vanilla Gaming, which was...
Oh, that was dog shit.
Yeah, it was... I chose it. It was... I think it's still around. It's like one of the oldest ones. It's like times 15 XP, and like, so you just run it. It's just like a day it takes to get to 60, and then you're just there to do like end game stuff, and it was fine. You know, I played a druid, and it was fine. But Nostalrius...
It has a cash shop too, right?
It didn't at the time I was there, but they eventually got one. Yeah, they just had the voting thing when I was there, right? Where you could you just vote.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
God, yeah.
Which is also not great, but the thing for me with Nostalrius that was really eye opening, I think not just for me but for Blizzard and everybody else, was I really missed. When I was on Vanilla Gaming, so it's a times 15 XP, but you can set it to times 1, and I did that. Just because I was like, I kind of want to do this again. I kind of want to do the grind. I want to take my time. Of course, after like 20 levels, when I'm the literal only person in Ashenvale, you know, it's you just sort of go, well, okay, fine. I guess I'll join the crowd.
Yeah.
The thing with Blizzard, you know, there's a famous line from Blizzard. You know, you think you do, but you don't. Which I think they said before Nostalrius really took off. I could be wrong on that timeline, but
yeah, it was.
Yeah. So Nostalrius really, I think, opened their eyes up and opened a lot of people's eyes up too. You know, we don't just want to like play the end game. We don't want to take a quick ride around and just be like, oh, this is great. We really wanted the full experience.
Yeah. We want to live in Azeroth.
Exactly. And like a big part of that is the slow grind, is some of the difficulties, some of the bugs. All of that is just the thing that made this game great. Yeah. And I think once Blizzard saw how popular Nostalrius was, that this was a server where you couldn't, you know, do times 15 XP or whatever, that there was no cash shop or voting, or they were like, oh, maybe there is something here.
Yeah. And so the people...
It wasn't just that, though. They were the only private server that willingly shut down after receiving...
That too.
That's true,
a cease and desist. Because everyone else... Because, I mean, you Google Warcraft private server and you get the phone book.
Yeah.
No, that's true. And like, when I say, I appreciate where you're coming from, Theloras, because I actually didn't really realize that until recently, because everyone's saying, obviously, you get the cease and desist letter, you ball it up and you toss it in the bin, which is what everyone was doing. For some reason, Nostalrius went sort of a bit down the martyr route and decided to actually reply, if you will, or shut down their servers and get involved in the process, which is what led, you know, that's the trickle down effect to what led to where we are today. But when I say also,
that is the difference.
For sure.
That is the difference.
For sure.
I think they honestly did that because they actually, I think a lot of those devs are really passionate about that server. And I think they personally like this, because I remember when this happened, everyone was like, oh, well, their servers are in Sweden or wherever. Like they didn't have to do it with where they were hosting the game.
Exactly.
But they did it because I think they honestly were like, well, fuck, if we do this, like, there's a chance that, like, we can plead our case and maybe they'll bring us on to help and, like, we can actually make this, like, a thing, you know?
Well, it was twofold because, number one, they didn't operate a cash shop. So, on face value, they were volunteers. They weren't in it for the money. And number two, once they got the cease and desist letter, they willingly shut down. And then at that point, Blizzard was like, okay, maybe there is something here.
Gutter, if I can
They were
turn to
martyrs for the cause.
Absolutely, they were. They were that word martyr again, for sure. Gutter, if I can turn to you for a second, because I used the phrase just then, I said off the cuff that, we want to live in Azeroth. This is what we want. And obviously there are people who could hear that and say, Josh, you fucking idiot. You can live in Azeroth right now. What are you talking about? You can do it legitimately. There's a version of the game sitting right there for you. So I appreciate the sort of the silliness that comes out of my mouth when I say that. But obviously to many of us, there's another version of Azeroth that we like, and that's what classic proffers that we feel that we can't get with the current version of the game. But Gutter, you're one of those people who, I believe when we spoke earlier, we haven't talked on the show before, but you and I have talked privately. I believe you mentioned that you played a whole bunch of old school MMOs as well. Is that right?
Yes and no. I definitely, I played heavily during, or at least when it comes to WoW, I played vanilla heavily, Burning Crusade even more so, Wrath. I kind of trickled out, and then I've kind of been checking in and to every expansion as it's gone on. Other MMOs I always kind of tried out, because I think WoW captured me at such a young age. I wanted to find something else, another world. I jumped into Aeon and a bunch of stuff, but nothing ever grabbed me that way. But it is funny though, because I got into private servers during TBC, I think it was. I'm trying to remember because I was so young. I actually ended up GMing some random fun server, where you could get to level 254 and you could run through Hajjal and kill a bunch of stuff for no reason. So it's funny because I don't have, I've been playing on private servers honestly for the last year or two, actually after Nost getting shut down is what got me back into them. But I was never progressively into them until now, to be honest.
Well, you mentioned Aeon, and I do remember you mentioning that last time we spoke, and that's why I was kind of going to get to this with you. And anyone else who's had this experience, please do chime in, because I'm sure we're all people who have tried a number of MMOs. But Nostalrius gets shut down. People would obviously say, hey guys, you like MMOs. If you don't like retail World of Warcraft, go and play another game. But I was there, I was trying out Aeon as well. I was trying out Warhammer Online and all that stuff, and it just wasn't scratching the itch for me. It wasn't really quite getting to that level that WoW did for me back in the day. So, Gutter, I'll start with you and anyone else who's, maybe we'll get to, Locked after this. I don't think we've heard from you yet, mate. Sorry guys, I'm trying to juggle everyone and make sure everyone gets in there. So we'll get there eventually. But Gutter, just quickly, why didn't other MMOs in this time around that 2016, 2017 timeframe do it for you?
That's tough. If we're talking 2016, 2017, it's funny because I still do play retail regularly, despite everything I have wrong with it, because I'm able to view it as a different game. What I always tell people is WoW now it's an MMO. Vanilla was an MMORPG.
Yeah.
It's no longer that. And honestly, it's just, for me, for better or for worse, I think, WoW stole from Ultima and everything steals from each other, but the core of WoW kind of defined what modern day MMOs would be. And I think for better or for worse, a lot of other games either try to directly oppose that in order to stand out in a lot of weird design decisions. And to be honest, MMOs aren't the market they were. They were groundbreaking when they came out in the early 2000s, but honestly, I'm sure the market share isn't nearly what they are anymore. Everything's games as a service now. A subscription to play a game? No way. You gotta get a battle pass and then you gotta unlock skins.
Loot boxes.
Exactly. So it's tough because, I don't think you'll ever not only capture that lightning in a bottle, but I don't think you're gonna get the amount of dev support that it did. And that honestly kind of ties into that year-long gap where they shut down Nost, right? And we didn't hear anything. And I think there's a lot of people out there who kind of view that, view maybe Classic as a quick cash-in or whatever to rehash content. But the thing is that if this was easy, Blizzard would have done this way long ago. If they could have easily just dropped vanilla again, or vanilla servers and said, hey, we're doing progressive content servers from day one, right? They would have done it if it was easy, because it's literally the laziest thing a company could do. You have 15 years of pre-developed content of a game that you can just slowly release again and people are going to eat it like fucking candy because you haven't been able to do it. But I think if anything, them taking that year was really a hard look at it. And clearly it's not easy. They are going back and, they didn't have all the code. And I think that's what a lot of that break was, is they weren't sure they could do it. So it's funny to me, even though some people view Classic as maybe an easy cash into it's the quote unquote knacks of wrath of like releasing a game, right? It's like reusing all of your stuff and putting it out again. I think if anything, it shows that like it's not easy and they're taking it seriously, and because they would have done this a long time ago, like easily a long time ago if it was easy for them to do.
I don't think there was enough of a show of hands for wanting it though, much before Nostalrius.
And that's true too, for sure. I mean, like I said, I played around on private servers, like when I was real young, literally to like go and see Hajal and like GM Island and stuff, just to like be a 13-year-old kid to see parts of the world that you couldn't see. But, I do agree because I only started. Well, right. But yeah, I mean, I only got back into private servers because of Nost, because I didn't think there were any that were actually that professional. And obviously Nost, like it had its bugs. You know, the population itself wasn't very Blizz-like, but you know, it was probably the closest anyone had gotten at that point.
Locht, let me throw it over to you now, mate, and just ask you again as we wrap up on this kind of pre-announcement phase of this call. How did you feel about the landscape of MMORPGs just prior to the announcement of Classic WoW? A lot of people talk about, you know, the death of the genre and how bleak it looked and, oh my God, fuck, why can't anyone make a decent MMORPG? Companies don't have the money to put the investment into the game or the time to develop these in the way in which they should be to deliver something amazing. What did you think of the options that were laid out before you, and why did it make the announcement of World of Warcraft Classic such a game changer?
Well, I was definitely one of those guys that was still playing retail. But I always, you know, whenever something new came along, be it Star Wars or any of the other major MMOs that appeared, I'd jump on board for that because I was, you know, always trying to look for that, you know, RPG experience that, you know, was slowly dwindling away as WoW came out. So when I actually heard the announcement that Classic was actually coming, I was quite amazed because that's the type of game I want. I want to be able to, you know, actually have a character I care about again. Like on retail, I have like 10 level 100 and something characters now. It doesn't matter. While in Classic, you know, I would have had this character that I valued and actually enjoyed playing. I put time and effort there.
Okay, guys, so I want to shift to the next gear of this call, and we get to that moment in late 2017 that everyone points to, the announcement of World of Warcraft Classic, something that I think it's pretty fair to say none of us saw coming. It blew us away when that announcement came at BlizzCon. People, you know, the videos are there, the reaction videos of people freaking the fuck out. You know, it's something that obviously was the impetus behind me starting the show. I freaked the fuck out as well. Jacoby, we haven't heard from you, mate. Let's go to you now. Tell us how you felt when you saw or heard about the announcement.
How I felt on May 17th was probably the same as normal because I actually I slept on the announcement, so I don't think I was one of the screaming, jumping around people that day, unfortunately. But no, it's funny because when I got the announcement a little week later, I was like, you know, it's kind of like the phases of the reaction. At first I was just like, well, that's kind of cool. Nice they're bringing it back. And then I thought about it a little bit more over the next few weeks, and I'm like, you know, I really did like those days, you know, back when I was 14. And then you think about it a bit more, and then I just got gradually more and more excited, and that's when I started looking for podcasts to listen to, and that's when I found the community. So it all kind of snowballed from there. But it's so it's been a crazy, like, I mean, I wasn't hyped day one, but it's crazy how I can be excited for something that's, you know, almost half my lifetime ago.
Well, with that crescendo kind of building for you, and it's interesting to hear someone that has slowly had the hype build as opposed to bursting out of the gate. Do you think by the time the game releases, you'll be fucking ready to go?
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, hanging out with you guys has been a really good way to keep myself in the hype loop there. But you know, like I said, it's just like now that I'm looking back and doing my research and remembering what I did like and didn't like, you know, it's not just the nostalgia factor we're looking for. Like in the whole, like vanilla is just a really, really good, solid RPG, which is like something I've always, you know, really enjoyed. And you know, part of me, it's not necessarily trying to recapture what I felt when I was 14, but it's trying to you know, appreciation for what, you know what, this is just a good game. Like, I can't be the only one who gets out the Super Nintendo once in a while for Mario Bros. Right?
Oh no, we all do that.
Come on, we all do that, right? So it's like, you know, games don't get bad as you get older. It's just you know, you appreciate them for different reasons. So part of me, that's what I'm looking forward to here, is finding a new appreciation for what I didn't get to do the first time. Like I've told a lot of people here in the community, and anyone in the Discord doesn't know, I love, you know, I'm really involved in the community, but I have very, very little experience. You know, back in the day when I was 14, my main activities were running around the world, and, you know, I'd go to this is where the Battle of Mount Hyjal happened, or, this is Wrathy Bay. Oh, this is so cool. And I never got anything done. So really, I feel like I wasted my time. So my approach to Classic now is a bit like I always think it's like that scene in Kill Bill when she walks in the room and, it's like, hey, World of Warcraft Classic, you and I have unfinished business.
Does that make us the crazy 88s for Josh?
Maybe.
Yeah, that makes specifically Mike the guy with the bowler mask who comes in and goes, yeah!
Oh, so good. So good. Batlord, let me fire it over to you. Now, guys, while I'm getting this one out of Batlord, I know, Mike, you've got a good story for this one, but think of the stories behind you finding out about the announcement. Now, Batlord, do you remember where you were or how you felt? Did you hear the news on the day? Did you hear it later? How did you go about digesting this news?
If I remember right, actually, I was hanging with some friends. We were playing on a different private server. I can't remember which one at the time. And our resident, internet sweeper got the news and told us about it because none of us were doing the live stream. And it was just, it was bananas. We all used to play together all the time. We did most of our leveling in the same room, whether it was at, the internet cafe around the corner or if it was at our friend's house. But, no, it was, we all lost our shit. It was, and we've been looking forward to it ever since then, even though, obviously it's taking them a long time to bring us, the most quality product they can. We're all still just holding our breaths, and with all the news lately, it's just been a constant hype train rolling.
Mike, I'll kick it over to you now because you mentioned that the announcement date was a special date to you. What's your story?
So the hype was, ever since the Nostalrius shutdown, the hype was building for me. Since, if anyone remembers this, the picture with Mark Kern with the giant stack of papers with the petition, it's got 500,000 signatures or something like that, and not weeks before BlizzCon, and I was like, it's gonna be my it was gonna be my birthday for the first day of BlizzCon, and I'm like, come on, Blizzard, please, for my birthday, give me something. I was one of those people that was kind of half, I was so into vanilla WoW at that point that I was actually kind of half expecting a classic announcement, but still it was no shit. There was opening ceremony, the fucking day of my birthday. I'm like, come on, Blizzard, give it to me, please, give me something. And then just when Jalen Brack when he tells the story about the ice cream, and he's like, and your favorite flavor is vanilla, and I'm like, holy fucking shit, no way! I start jumping up and down, and I literally do a lap, 2 or 3 laps around my house. I was I couldn't fucking believe it. I was oh my god.
It must have been an amazing 13th birthday present.
Sick burn. Woo! Hey, you guys gotta remember, anyone could have made that announcement, but the fact that it was J. Allen Brack who did it was the ultimate mea culpa for him. Yeah. Because he was the face of you think you do, but you don't all those years.
It was the best possible PR move.
Apologizing for that.
I fucking hated that dude up until that day. I'd hated his guts for saying that shit.
Exactly.
I wanted to punch that dude in the face, and then when he announced Classic, I wanted to fucking kiss him on the forehead.
Ale, let me ask you, because I still say that that's one of their great PR moves, and as you guys have stated already, it made you change your feelings about him, and he's now the fucking president of the company, which obviously we didn't see coming at the time, but is significant now. For him to get those brownie points back with the community, Ale, what did that mean to you?
I think that was huge, especially with, kind of the way Blizzard has been going recently, to kind of have a throwback to the older times where they really were a gaming company made by gamers. To kind of, do that, to have a guy so high up eat crow in front of all their fans and to give the fans what they really want, that's really something special.
I've got no doubt that he's probably very happy that happened the way in which it did. But it's something that, people still cite that moment as such a huge moment. You go that, I think it was, and you guys can correct me, I'm pretty sure this is the case. The announcement of Classic is still it's either one of the most or the most popular post over at the r/wow Reddit. Is that right?
No clue, but I would probably argue it is the like one of the most iconic moments ever for like any BlizzCon.
Certainly in our hearts, it's the most popular one over there.
Yeah, it was a weird one. It just stands out to me because I remember thinking like, that's weird. Like the WoW Redditors loved that classic announcement. But anyway, moving on from that. So we find out that we're getting it. Well, I should ask, I'll open it to the floor. Does anyone have any really standout memories, about the announcement? Did you go outside and kiss a stranger or anything like that?
I kind of was, I have an interesting one. It's not like crazy, but I used to, this was 2017, right? That BlizzCon. So I was working on, a Discovery Channel show at the time, and I was actually in Egypt, and we were camping in the desert, kind of like out, like near Cairo, but kind of outside of it. But I actually remember spending, however much it costs through your phone company to actually have like access to like your data when you're like international or whatever. I remember I was trying to like pull up any feeds I could like of BlizzCon because I just wanted to like see announcements or whatever. And then I see the announcement. I was trying to watch like the live feed, like the virtual ticket or whatever, and it kept stuttering and like getting really like grainy and, pixelated and stuff. And I'm not even making this up, but it was just like vanilla. And I was like, what? And like, I start freaking out. I didn't even know he was making a joke, like, cause I couldn't get it to load enough. I didn't even understand the ice cream references or anything for like a week until I flew back to the States to watch the actual announcement video. I thought he straight up just walked up and was like, we're making vanilla WoW servers. So I'm running around like in like our campsite out in the desert, like freaking out to all of my coworkers who like know nothing about any of this. I'm like, dude, like
I would have gone up and kissed the camel myself.
I was very close to it. I didn't know. It's funny because at that point, once I realized nobody around me, cared or gave a shit, I kind of just like walked off by myself and like smoked a cigarette. I was standing over by the camels actually and just kind of like, all right, fuck. So I need to reevaluate, my future.
That sounds like the last 3 years of my life.
Yeah. Like I was like, fuck, I'm going to have to call off work for like a month whenever they announce it. That's why like I'm waiting for the date. Not because I'm impatient. I'm fine with waiting. I just like need to plan my life around that for a solid month or two.
Fair enough. Tim, let me throw this one to you because we're going to get to a moment, and again, we're just going down the chronology here, but obviously the announcement meant a lot to me, and I was really, really excited to go back and sort of, as one of you mentioned before, kind of like rewrite the wrongs of my past vanilla self. I was like, I want to do this again, and I want to get another shot at it. I want to do things differently. I want to sort of come at it with a little bit of a smarter angle and try and sort of just have fun in a different way this time around. This is so great that we get to do this again. I'm so excited. And then I did what many of us did. I turned to media. I was jumping on YouTube. I was looking around for a way in which to find people talking about this announcement and this game. I was like, World of Warcraft Classic, I want to hear people talking about it. I want to see videos about it. I want to consume media on this topic. And I found that there was a little bit out there, but not too much. And so obviously that led to a certain thing. But let me ask you, Tim, because you were one of the first few people to jump on the show. You were very early, in the Discord. Obviously I started Countdown to Classic, to get another podcast out there. You were an early adopter of the show. You were surely doing the same thing as I was, running around going, where can I hear people talking about this?
I mean, months. As soon as it came out, I was looking, just like you said, everywhere. My normal thing I love to track down are podcasts. But there were a lot of World of Warcraft podcasts, and they might have done a 5-10 minute segment being like, oh, hey, Classic. I guess that's cool. And I'm like screaming at them, like, how are you not more excited? I was trying to track things out on YouTube, and people were excited, but it just, because nobody had the build up like myself, and I think a lot of other people who had played Nostalgia, because a lot of these people who are doing professional shows, they're on retail, so that's their main audience, and that's fine. But I cannot express to you how happy I was to find this show, because I had been looking everywhere for something that could just put classic World of Warcraft discussions and news and whatever into my ears for like an hour or 2 or 3 nowadays, which is great, every single day, And so I think I found you had come out with like 30 episodes. I was like, well, great. I guess this is what I'm doing for the rest of the month.
I was about to like echo those kind of things that Tim said. I was like, literally the day they announced Classic, maybe not only a few hours later, I was literally clamoring to find stuff to listen to. I literally started listening to WoW radio again. All the stuff that Total Biscuit did, just to try to even though I'd played Nostalrius, I want to remember what it actually was back then. I just wanted to consume media about classic WoW again, even though I was super entrenched in the private server community with that. I found the podcast when you were 5 episodes in. I'm like, this is what I needed in my life. I needed classic content.
Solveig, if I can ask you, mate, because you've done a relatively similar thing to me in that you've created a spot for people to congregate and talk about the game. And as I mentioned at the top of the call, you created the Oceanic Discord, which is now doing so well. Got about 700 members over there, Australians, New Zealanders, people in the general region who are going to be playing the game. What was your thought behind that time when you were clamoring for people to talk about this thing with?
Look, I actually started that Discord back not too long after the announcement of Classic. That server basically sat there for about a year, not really doing anything. I had a couple of friends, Ethug and a couple of others who came in, and it kind of sat there for a while, and not a lot happened up until really 2018 with BlizzCon there. So not actually long ago either, where pretty much it just exploded. I started actually sort of putting it out there, getting the name out there, and lots more people started sort of jumping on board, and a couple of people came in and were like, oh yeah, I'm so glad that we finally got a space to actually talk about all this stuff, and they just went from there. They went to town, started throwing the threads out on Classic WoW, onto the forums, onto, I think I did the Baron's Chat one, but yeah, they just sort of went from there, and it's been a snowball. It's been pretty incredible.
Jacoby, if I can turn to you for a second and just say that obviously, soon after the announcement, we got the show going, but also we started up the Discord as well, the show's Discord. And you were, again, relatively early adopter of the Discord, but also you're a Countdown to Classic patron and someone who obviously I thank every week on the show for your support and helping the show progress the way in which it has. If I could just ask you to sort of explain what your experience has been with the Discord up to this point, because a funny little thing happened along the way of starting the show, and that's this Discord that became something so much more than I ever anticipated, because I don't know if you guys know this, but I didn't know what Discord was when I actually got told, hey man, you should start a Discord for the show. And I was like, literally, what's Discord? And had to look into it. It was like, all right, fuck it. It's like a chat room. I'll do it. And then it's gotten to the stage now where it's such an interesting place to be. But if I can get you to tell us, Jacoby, about what you think of it all.
Yeah, I guess, it's even crazy to hear I'm one of the early adopters of the Discord, because I feel like I was really tardy to the party, but, I don't know. It's such a crazy feeling, because I haven't really been wanting to be involved with an online community for years. I think personally that's what really affected my original experience of WoW when I was younger, because I think it really especially listening to other people, it really makes or breaks your experience with Warcraft, depending on how good a community you have. You have friends, you have a guild to support you. So that's a huge difference. So I didn't have that the first time, and I think that's part of what let me down. But now, getting involved in this, and at first I dropped in just because I was, the others were saying I want to consume content about Classic now that I'm interested in it. Well, usually I look for a podcast because it's something to listen to on my way to work. Oh, this podcast is really good. This Corbett guy seems to know what he's talking about. I like his voice. He seems to be charming. And then, there's a Discord. Oh, let's check Discord. I've heard of Discord. Let me check this out. And same, I think there's a lot of people who have started, using Discord for the first time, specifically because they want to check out this community. And, I got in, and it's crazy. I feel right at home here. And a lot of the things I like about Discord is it kind of feels like the early internet days before Facebook and Reddit and social media really got going. If you wanted to talk about something, you go to a forum and you have a tag and you post, and people read those posts. And, you have that kind of community builds from it there. But, this is a nice little family now, and I've kind of, even if we're not talking about World of Warcraft, there's always good conversation and good energy in the area. And even if I don't agree with what everyone's talking about, it's nice to have that discourse and that, just that generation of ideas and content. And, we all have different interests. I mean, me and Mike have hijacked the, Play Other Games channel into Magic the Gathering channel, but, sorry, not sorry. It's great to, that's one of my favorite things now is, having, people to talk about Magic with, cause unfortunately for me, I don't have a lot of real life people that share a lot of my common interests. My brother's probably the only one who would even in my real life circle who would consider playing World of Warcraft again. And as soon as I asked him if he would, he's like, fucking no, man, those days are gone. Like I'm married now. So it's really good for me because it's hard to share my passion for this game with people in real life. I have this whole family online and either in my pocket or when I come home and just even if I'm playing other games. So it's one thing I really love about the Discord is, they're here for you. Talk it out, listen to other people. It's a family. It's great.
I'm glad you've taken that out of it so far. I definitely have come to feel the same way about it. Locked, if I can turn to you now and just sort of ask you about the period of time that elapsed from the announcement, let's say until BlizzCon 2018. Now that's about a year. Well, it is a year. We didn't hear a lot from Blizzard and people started to get frustrated. And while we weren't hearing anything, this massive argument sort of erupted within the community about changes versus no changes. Tell me about your evaluation of that funny 12-month period we had from like November 2017 to November 2018 when we're arguing amongst ourselves and not hearing anything from Blizzard.
When that no changes versus changes argument first appeared, I was very much actually one of those changes people. I know, horrible. But basically I was, of the opinion, cool. Vanilla Warcraft, classic Warcraft was amazing. But as we all know, there were problems. But I've, I've seen the light at this point, like, let's not change the game because slippery slope. As much as I'd want to say, let's make hunters the greatest of all damage dealers, there's too many changes. That one change could lead to many other changes that could ruin the game. But that said, it's interesting to see that I've seen the no changes camp also change over time. Like when that first argument first appeared, we'd see hashtag no changes. It needs to be exactly as the game was when it finished. Nothing changes at all. Can't even have colorblind mode in there because otherwise that's a change and that's a bad thing. But as we've seen since then, people have been a bit more accepting of, oh yeah, we could, change it so it runs better on a modern PC. We could change it to do, these other simple background system type things that don't actually really, affect the overall gameplay experience that we're looking for in classic WoW. So yeah, I'm very, it's interesting to see how the community's slowly moved to that more center location over time.
Now, Batlord, I'll turn to you for sort of a final direct question, and then I'm going to open it up to the floor a little bit amongst all of you who will have some varied opinions, I feel, on this period of time. But Batlord, do you recall, would you be able to put into words how you felt during that 12-month period when Blizzard was being silent? Were you getting the shits that they weren't talking to us very much? We had, the one dev water cooler that came through and just months of silence that people were getting really, really sort of vitriolic about. Do you remember much about that period?
I do, definitely. I remember right after the announcement, they're, being really excited and going, okay, I know, that it's not going to be immediate. It's going to take some time. And then, it got a few months into it and just between life, I'm in school and just, all this other stuff. I just kind of had to mentally check out of it for a while because I was just too caught up in it. And, I kind of dipped my toe back in on that first water cooler talk. And, I'm trying to think when it was, what episode of your podcast, but something sparked and I was like, I'm going to look around online, see if there's anything. And I found your podcast and I feel like I came in just in time because, I was catching up. And then that's when all of the recent news has come out and I've just been able to power through your whole podcast and catch up. But no, those 12 months, like I said, I had to kind of just check out because nothing was coming out.
Now, guys, I'm going to open it to the floor. First in, best dressed. You guys sort of talk and yell amongst yourselves for a little while here. Who was the shittiest that Blizzard was staying silent for so long?
Obviously, Mark was the most.
I was so pissed for how I was ready to I felt like, at least in my mind, I was ready to go to fucking Irvine, California and be like, Blizzard, tell us something about Classic. Hearing so many things about people saying, oh yeah, we gotta rebalance druids or paladins or give us all these very clearly things that were in vanilla WoW. I was ready to lose my fucking mind. I'm like, these people never wanted Classic, and now just because of the Classic announcement, they just want to chime in and just change the game for how they feel, not the people that actually want the game the way it was back then. I was like,
okay, I've changed my mind again. I reckon we should actually nerf undead rogues.
Imagine Michael just walking around in real life, walking up behind people, making the unstealthing sound with his mouth, and then just stabbing people in the back.
To be fair, isn't that literally racist?
The undead rogue, yeah.
With how long it took them to confirm that they were trying to be as authentic as they could be, I was frothing at the mouth with all these people espousing changes to the game. I was ready to lose my fucking mind.
Someone was about to chime in about how upset they were on the silence. Who was that?
Oh, well, it's funny. It wasn't necessarily about how upset I was. I just think it's a different perspective that I can give because I'm sure a lot of people here play retail in some degree, but I think for better or for worse, because I'm a masochist, I actually I'm a progressive raider right now, at least in it. And so for me, when this so that was announced, I think the same BlizzCon as BFA. So Legion was in full swing right there, and in my opinion, regardless of overarching design decisions in the overall direction of the game, I think Legion was actually a pretty fantastic expansion in regards to what WoW has kind of become, not comparing it to vanilla, right? If you view it as a different game kind of. So for me, they announced Classic. I'm sitting there going, this is great. They're sitting there going, it's going to take a while, but because in my opinion, I liked Legion so much and it was in full swing, I was kind of all right, that's fine. You do that. That's great. I'm going to focus on this for now. So I wasn't mad at the silence. If anything, I took it because it's Blizzard. They don't talk unless they want to. Soon TM is a thing because of them, right? So I don't know, just a different perspective because I actually had to look up when they announced it and was oh yeah, Legion was in full swing. It's funny. I actually wasn't really chomping at the bit. I wanted information, but I was kind of preoccupied, I guess.
Yeah. Solveig, let me ask you, mate, and again, once Solveig's done with his answer, guys, go nuts, everyone chime in when you can, but what do you think when you look back and reflect on where we've come now I do honestly look back and laugh a little bit at what I call the civil war, of, changes versus no changes. And it's, the devs have done such a good job recently of, and it's something that I've been proven wrong on, going down this no changes angle. I was sort of a bit skeptical going is it really going to wind up no changes? And it looks like they really are trying to do that authenticity. So I'll happily eat crow on that one. But what did you think of the arguments that were going on forums and whatnot a year ago and how crazy they got?
Look, I basically feel like Switzerland, to be honest. One part of me is you know what? I want it to just be WoW, how I remember it. No changes. Just get on, enjoy, play the shit out of the game and just, go from there. But on the other side of things, it's well, Paladins kind of fucked. Druids aren't very good as boomkins, all these little things that could make things a little bit better for certain people. But yeah, I don't know. I found it, pretty funny watching sort of the civil war go on the forums and around the discords and that sort of thing. And I think to the most degree that's sort of simmered down because I think Blizzard's actually finally come out and just been you know what, we're going to stick true to what we know, what we made, and we're just going to get on with it from there. So yeah, it's been a wild ride, but I think we're definitely going to see a no changes Classic. Should be good.
I'd say it's somewhat changes. You still have the more modern client, and who really knows what exact changes that's going to bring to the game.
I guess we're probably going to see...
And I don't know if that'll work in the modern client.
I guess we're probably going to see minor changes, but I think that's a lot to do with having to go back and grab that information off of sort of skeleton clients and that sort of thing. I think to the most part, 99.5% or something of it's going to be no changes. I think we're going to get just that little bit extra that is really a bit out of their control.
The analogy I think of now is just that like they're treating this sort of like a modern kind of museum. Like if you wanted to like recreate an old West train, right, that people could ride, you'd want all the seats to look the same and the aesthetic to be the same and a lot of the things to be the same to give you that feel. But there'd also probably be air conditioning because who wants to ride through like the Texas desert in the middle of July, right?
We do.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing that sort of brought me unstuck because a couple of people have commented, you know, and not sort of they weren't being overly dickish about it or anything, but sort of saying, look, Josh, you've been saying that this is the game we're getting is winding up the changes version of the game when it's clearly going to be the no changes version of the game. And my interpretation, Ale, I think we somewhat agreed on this of no changes, and this is erroneous in a lot of people's minds, and I'm happy to wear that, has been literally not one change. And people have been saying that's a ridiculously rigid interpretation. No changes was more of a movement of meaning as fewer changes as possible. And I was like, I thought no changes meant not one change, but
early no changes was exactly that. Early no changes was
it was
nothing.
Absolutely,
must
nothing.
be different.
Yeah.
It must be the original client, all that crap.
I think there were some people who were like, the tough thing with this argument is I think there's a lot of people on both sides that do the whole, that side is arguing and then they list a ton of ridiculous things.
Can I ask a question to everyone here that I'm just kind of curious about? I feel like you guys would have better insight than other people.
Go for it, mate. Go for it.
Okay, so everyone has like their moment in WoW, right? Where like it began to fall from grace. Some people claim it was Cataclysm. Some people claim it was Wrath. I lean towards Wrath was the beginning of the end, honestly. But regardless, everyone has their moment, right? Where design decisions were being made that led to the game to where it is now, that is no longer vanilla. Now, I'm very much in the camp of no changes in the sense of like, I want to experience vanilla, right? But at a certain point, right? Like if this is going to be a sustainable model or a product for them, like they're going to do one of two things, and one seems more obvious than the other. Like just essentially releasing progressive servers, right? Like eventually they will put out a TBC server, a Wrath server, and so on and so forth. But if that's the case, I mean, that's the no changes crowd, right? Like if you look at the long-term plan of whatever, you know, Classic could be, if you take the no changes route, you're going to end up with progressive servers. And, you know, even regardless in the modern day, if we're on expansion, you know, 20 or 30, we will end up at Warlords of Draenor with these progressive servers. And obviously, yeah, with the transfers and stuff, right. But my question is, and you know, it's funny, I'm no changes, but is there anyone in here that like even toys with the idea of like a horizontal, you know, design direction where it's like a what if, idea. Like Elseworlds, like maybe not even full expansions, like I don't know, but like is that like blasphemy? And I don't know what point you pick to like go off of. If it was me, I would say like I guess we deal with Wrath and then we like peel out before Kata. But like is that? I just don't know what the like hardcore community feels about that, right? Like I was just curious.
Lock, you're saying you're pro?
I would love to see a move from the classic vanilla WoW we have to something new that follows that design philosophy. Because I feel that, you know, from Burning Crusade onwards, like we start seeing that slight change. Like the only thing I dislike about Burning Crusade is probably arenas and flying. Otherwise, I think that was a relatively perfect expansion. Wrath of the Lich King, I think the raiding and PvE side of it was great, but then you had the introduction of group finders. Like I'd much rather see from the end of Classic new content with that original design philosophy in place. You know, let's make stuff equivalent to Nax gear, new raids and all that, you know, go in a different direction, focus on different stats and so forth.
I'll add my 2 cents on this one because I'm one of the people who's against it. Not only because I think that a TBC Classic server is the most fiscally responsible decision that they could make, but I've also been on the show before saying this, and I'm far from the only person out there saying this. It gets repeated around a fair bit, but I do not want them to go in that direction. I'm sort of against you on that one, Locked, but I appreciate where people are coming from when they ask for it. But the only reason that I'm against it is that I don't think they can do it because obviously they've got new people there, new design philosophies, blah, blah, blah. The analogy I've used in the past is The Simpsons. You know, the people who are behind The Simpsons now would love to think that they can recreate the old magic, but they just can't because it's not the same crew. Now, if someone from Blizzard were listening to this going, this Australian idiot doesn't know what he's talking about, of course we can do that, I would reflect back to them the following. You think you can, but you can't. And that ship has sailed.
Oh, he went there.
I'd actually say that the current Blizzard team, like at least for the guys who we've seen working on Classic, actually doing a wonderful job at actually trying to maintain that game that we love. Like they have shown that they understand what the community wants, that they understand what Classic WoW is. And because of that, at the moment they have my trust. Like as far as Blizzard Activision goes, those Classic devs are by far the group I trust the most there.
I absolutely agree with you. People, couldn't I go an extra leg and say this much? That's like, think of it like an art restoration team. They've done an amazing job recreating this project from what we've been told. We haven't got the final product yet, so we can't really comment, but it sounds like they're heading in the right direction. But that's a small team. Are you really going to trust them to, if they were to expand and say, hey, we're making new content, they need a shit ton more staff? Are you then going to trust those people who have restored the project to actually build something new that you would like?
Well, it's a question for many years from now, for sure.
Yeah.
Let's enjoy Classic.
And just to kind of sum up the point, I didn't mean to sidetrack here at all. I guess the question, or just one way to look at it is like, are you okay with them, if your full node changes, right, eventually ending up with BFA right now, or like Warlords?
I don't want that to happen.
Or alternatively, would you rather see, and I don't have a lot of knowledge of this. I just know some of it, but like, the 2007 RuneScape route, right? Or the class, right? Like, don't they involve the community a lot? Like, talking to them?
Yeah,
they do it with polls.
Yes. Someone plays old school.
But I agree. I see what you're worried about. I just wasn't sure what some of the more hardcore people thought about that.
I think the issue with progressing past vanilla into TBC, Wrath, and beyond is that you sort of then run into the same issue that we were in a couple of years back, where people want to play vanilla, but they won't have the option to. Like, once you've progressed it past vanilla, then you no longer have vanilla. You have TBC. So I don't know that it's very responsible of Blizzard to kind of progress past that. Or if they do, they'd have to provide at least some sort of form of like old server or something for those people to retain access to vanilla.
The player base.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's a funny one that you guys might, this might rile you up and get me, at the subject of some pitchforks and torches. But think about this for a second. If they do go down the Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King route and just sort of end it after that original trilogy or what have you, that's going to be years and years down the track, right? Now, I know Blizzard have told us that, yes, they want us to be able to play Vanilla WoW in perpetuity, if you will. They want us to have this, 15 years down the track or what have you. But let's be honest with each other for a second. Do you think let's say we get Burning Crusade and Wrath, and it's 2026, right? And we've all had our fun on legacy servers for many years. Do you really, really believe that the complaint then is going to be, I wanted vanilla? Are you still going to want to play vanilla WoW realistically in 7 to 8 years' time?
I think, it's one of those things where, eventually people are going to, it's like having old games available. People still play Zelda, people still play the original Mario. And it's, it's not, it's not like when a new Mario gets released, the numbers or anything like that, but people are going to always want to play these games. It's one of the unique things about MMOs is as expansions come on and new patches, you can never go back to the old game. But people want that. And so I agree with what Soul was saying, and just that, like, if they're going to do it, and I totally understand and would be fine if they did a TBC, but leave vanilla, like, be like, here's vanilla, it'll always be there, locked at 112, and people want to copy their characters onto a new TBC server, that's fine, but, they should always have it there as an option, just sort of like an old game that you can play.
Yeah,
I think one of the most likely scenarios is how private servers do it now, which is, we progress to Nax, and then a couple of months after that, a new server gets released. And it gives people the chance to do that fresh start again, which a lot of people really do love when it comes to vanilla Warcraft, is that early period in the game where you're all leveling up, you're all gearing up.
What about like seasonal vanilla servers? Is that something people have talked about at all? Where like you have 3 months or, you have a release schedule, right? But in some kind of design way.
A lot of people don't want to lose their characters though.
I just want to chime in really contentious view in from what maybe maybe the casual position, like where I'm coming from, like for the people who are maybe either coming back to World of Warcraft like myself, or people who have never really played it before and this is their first time playing it. we're really excited to play vanilla. And, me personally, I want to experience what I never got to back in the day and all the good endgame stuff. And same with the people who are starting, they've heard about all these bosses. Maybe they've read the WoW stories and they want to see Ragnaros or whatever. But again, like for those of us who are only playing a couple hours a day or maybe even a couple times a week, if you've got kids or something, it's a tall order getting to endgame content. So with the progressive release that they're talking, let's say by the time I'm fully equipped and full Nax gear, tier 3, ready to go, fully everything's done in vanilla. That's like what, 2.5 years out from now, like realistically, if I'm, even if that's really me trying as well, right? So by that point, if I want to keep playing and I want more, I'm not necessarily opposed to more release anyway, because I would like to see where TBC is out. And especially now that they've updated it for the modern computer rather than me trying to track down old CDs or playing on private servers of it. It's a nice option.
I guess when I brought this up, I see where you're coming from. I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't have Classic later down the track. I think it's my skepticism more flows from if we go through it a second, like this is the second time, as we say, we did it 14 years ago. We're doing it again now. I guess it's the presumption that if in 8, 9, 10 years time, were we still wanting to be playing Classic, it's on the presumption that the next big MMO never came out and that we're still sitting on this island going, yeah, we just want to keep doing this over and over again, which we may well do. And yeah, of course I'll create a character every now and again and have a bit of fun, and also will the community be behind it in 10 years time? Like it's way too hard to project, but who knows? So, guys, I might sort of change topics and we'll get to the sort of the end of the call now, the home stretch, and just talk about this period of time that we're going through now. Blizzard is finally talking to us. Classic is right around the corner. Summer is coming. How relieved have you guys been to finally have the floodgates open with news about this project?
It has been amazing. It's great to actually see that there is a bunch of information coming out now. Honestly, we know so much more now than we did 2 months ago. Like, we know exactly what we're getting. All we really don't have at this point is Oceanic servers confirmed and a timeline of, when these different phases are coming.
I was fucking relieved when they started actually releasing stuff that they were trying to be like as authentic to the game as possible. I'm like, thank God. Mm-hmm. It was like new life was breathed into me. All that period that we were talking before about the whole change versus no changes. I felt like sometimes I felt like, God, I felt like just like a contentious wreck, just like about this game that I just absolutely loved, that people just wanted to tear apart just because like they didn't like it.
The one that really upset me was the one asking for like no, not even colorblind mode, and like that to me really was like that's a bit of a lie.
Right.
The big thing that's really affected me and a lot of the people I talk to is that every kind of announcement they've made recently has been really reassuring. Everything has kind of been moving in the direction I feel like that the majority of people want it to. Like, we have all these concerns about, how they're going to do things, but I feel like generally, they're like building a lot of trust with this.
Yeah.
Right? Every announcement they make, people are generally happy about it. There's some issues, but even then, they are taking those issues, they're considering it, and then they're maybe changing it and getting back to us.
Is everyone happy?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I'm definitely, these last few like blue posts have definitely made me feel a lot better about it. Especially when the only thing I'm still leery about is sharding.
Yeah,
that is the main thing. Like, if they do sharding for more than like a few weeks, only in the starting zones, that could be a fucking deal breaker.
I think we just need a server announcement, to be quite honest, like sharding and what they want to do for the servers. Like, we've gotten that post about them not doing RP PvP, but then sort of what does that leave us with the like RP PvP and PvE servers? Like, how many of each of those are we going to get? Like, I think just a nice big server post would be really appreciated by the community.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess, guys, we'll finish it with this one. The release date is the last huge piece of information that we're really hoping for, but we're so close now. Summer really is just around the corner. After all that we've been through, are you guys just as hyped as ever? Have you grown weary, or is it only getting better, this hype train?
Choo-choo! So hyped. Super hyped. I'd love to see them release, the system requirements they're going to want for the game, just because I know that my computer will run classic, or will run, like a classic servers, but it doesn't run the new game very well at all. That's for sure.
I'm just excited for, obviously, at the end of Game of Thrones, when all the characters stop fighting, turn to the camera and tell us the release date, because obviously that was just what's going to happen, right?
That's the ending. Yeah, absolutely. Now, look, guys, I'll go through this all one by one, and I just want to say thank you so much for everyone getting on this call. I'll give everyone, so think of something. I'll give you one short, sharp burst to end this call on, just to tell us your thoughts of where we've been, where we are, what you think about WoW Classic at this point in time. This is the Classic community. We've had so many of you on this call, and this is the Countdown to Classic community voicing their opinions, and I'm so thankful to have you all here. Ale, let's start with you. Real short, sharp burst, mate. How are you feeling about where we're at?
It feels fantastic. This is why I've, become more involved, why I miss the Classic community so much. Just since I've came into it, being able to meet up with old friends through your show has just been fantastic. And that for me is what Classic really is the community. And I'm so happy.
Batlord, how about you?
100% on board with Ale. The thing I love about this Discord is it reminds me of what it was like to play back in the day, back when the community was tight-knit. It mattered, the people on your server. I feel like the Countdown to Classic community is our own server, it's great. And I'm so excited. I can't wait to be playing.
Mike?
Oh, it has been a fucking emotional roller coaster, but I am ready to fucking go. The hype train is there. I'm ready to stir the pot.
Very good. Jacoby?
I've said it before and I'll say it again. This place feels like a true family, and I genuinely love this family. I'm very excited to play with all these people in World of Warcraft. For those of you listening to this episode right now and, are humming and hawing about it, definitely, consider joining the Discord and consider playing with us online. We're a great group of people, and, we're looking forward to having some adventures.
I appreciate that, mate. Lox?
Sadly, won't be able to play with everyone here because you guys are all going to be rolling on the wrong servers over in NA. I look forward to ganking everyone that I do come across as a hunter. And remember, guys, it is a hunter weapon.
Sorry, Jacoby, you said something. You're coming through a little low. What did you have to say to Lox?
It's the right side up servers rather than the wrong servers.
That's right, the right side up, where the toilets flush the right way. Solveig, mate, how about you? How are you feeling about where we're at?
Yeah, look, I'm pretty stoked. I'm glad to see that the hype train is in full effect, and I'm glad to see the community coming together. Can't wait to get on, and I'm looking forward to getting some friends in who haven't actually played Classic before, so that'll be...
Absolutely. And finally, Tim, old friend, what do you got to say, mate?
I mean, I'm crazy excited, and most importantly, I want to give a lot of thanks to you. Josh, you have done an incredible job, not just with the podcast, but creating this community that is, you heard everybody else say it. It's awesome. It's like a family. It is, everybody in here is great. It's so inclusive and so kind and so welcoming to every play style and every person. And, there's no toxicity here. Even Mike isn't that toxic. And it's just, but it really is something else.
My heart's growing right now. God, I think I'm gonna shit. I'm gonna shed a tear right now.
Oh, look,
swear to God.
We'll bring it in for a hug, guys. Let me just say and take this opportunity to say I appreciate the very kind words, and I'm not trying to deflect or anything, but I really want to stress this, that the reason the community is the way it is because of you guys. The reason the show is the way it is because of you guys. Everything is nothing without your input. And, I have been absolutely touched and humbled by these amazing people such as yourself. As you say, there's no toxicity. These intelligent, kind, wonderful people who continue to put their hands up to get involved with the show and the Discord and make it such an amazing place to be. We are the Classic community. We are the Countdown to Classic community, and I just want to say thank you for making it one of the more special experiences of my life, and I can't wait to keep going with you all, and I hope to see you all around the Discord soon.
And hopefully we have episode 200 long after Classic comes.
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
Man, yeah.
Just before we get to the Kevin Jordan call, everyone, I just want to remind you to please go and support Kevin over at Twitch. You can find him streaming 5 days a week over there under the name Kevin Jordan. So it's very easy to find him. Please drop in and say Countdown sent you. He's very, very entertaining. He loves to have a chat about World of Warcraft as well, even if he's streaming other games. So feel free to go and say hello and support him there. He'd love to see you. But now let's hear from Kevin again. He's been such a friend of the show through this series, and today he's going to be talking to us about Paladins. Here we go. All right, it's time for another Countdown to Classic call and another Countdown to Classic Kevin Jordan special. Kevin, you're back once again for this sort of thrilling series that has the listeners on the edge of their seats. I've been getting a lot of responses about this one. People saying that they're absolutely loving having you on the show. So I really should, I should have forwarded a lot of this, fan mail onto you and, you know, sort of let you know how much people have appreciated everything you've had to say. How are you, mate?
Doing great. That's great feedback. I'm really happy to hear it. I mean, it's been really fun to take this trip down memory lane, and obviously with Classic coming, it's fresh in everyone's minds. So, yeah, it's coming together to be an exciting summer. I'm happy to build on that excitement.
I'm so glad you've been having a good time. It would kill me if you were sort of dreading these calls. So that's a good start. And we've got joining us for this call about Paladins, obviously the show's resident Paladin expert, Theloras. How are you, mate?
Very good, very good. Thank you again for having me, Josh, and hello to Kevin. I have gone on your Twitch stream a few times. I'm not sure if you remember, but I'm the guy who was always pestering you with questions.
Yeah, very nice. I do remember. Good to see you again.
All right, guys, let's get this party started. Now, Kevin, you know the drill by now. I'll start pretty general and then we'll get a bit more niche as we go on. Theloras has got his handful of questions packed up and ready to go, and he'll jump in whenever he hears something interesting that you say. But this is a class that I repeat this frequently on the show. I feel like we always talk about Paladins, yet it's not the most played class generally stats-wise from what we see when people take polls. But, you know, Paladins are the talk of the town. And we'll get to some of the more controversial issues about them soon. But just in general, were you happy with where the Paladin was overall in vanilla?
You know, there's very few classes that I didn't consider to be a pretty big success. Some were just kind of okay, but I actually consider the Paladin to be one that failed to live up to the dream, the class fantasy, probably the worst. So in terms of, I wouldn't say it was a failure by any means, but he definitely struggled. He struggled with class fantasy. He struggled with being pigeonholed in, you know, bigger group scenarios. But I will say that the lower number thing you can expect, certainly in vanilla, because, and this was probably harder data to read, but the Shaman and the Paladin only being available to one side was automatically going to cut down on the number of, you know, people playing those. So take that with a grain of salt.
Well, one question I've got straight off the bat from hearing what you've just said there is you said on an earlier installment of this segment, it might have been the Druid one I think it was the Mage one 2 weeks ago, where you said, you know, you love all of your children equally. And a lot of Paladins might feel that, well, hey man, where was that equal love? So at what stage did you start to realize something might be amiss with Paladins, and what was the general chatter around the office about what could be done?
It was before release. I knew there were going to be issues. We didn't have enough time to polish his seal judgment system, so it went out a little bit wonky. That was one of the last systems I worked on, and just didn't have enough iteration time. And it also informed my decision of which class to play in once the servers went live. My main character throughout was a Redditan, essentially, human Redditan. So I played that mainly, and then on the Horde side, I played an Undead Mage. And that was more, you know, for fun because the Mage was doing pretty well. But I took it as something I had to do to play the Redditan to really get in and understand what was going on with it, to try to live in the shoes of the players that were suffering, trying to, you know, make that class fantasy come true. So I did love all my children, and the Paladin, specifically the Redditan, was the problem child, essentially.
Well, I mean, go for it, Theloras.
If I may, what did you think of the players, the Paladin players who were on the open beta, and they had Crusader Strike, they had Holy Strike, and then, as you just said, you didn't have enough time to flesh out the Seal and Judgment system. And all of a sudden, live, like basically, I myself didn't play on the beta, and I didn't start playing until several months after launch. So I only knew the Seal and Judgment system. Actually, let me rephrase that. I didn't even know what the hell a judgment was until I was level 50. I had no idea. That's a true story. That's how much of a noob I was. But one of the constant gripes that players had all over the forums is, give us back Crusader Strike, give us back Holy Strike. And so that leads me to my first question. Why was adding Strike such an uphill battle for you? Did you want it in, or did you get pushback from the other devs? Like, what? Because I remember when TBC beta first started, we didn't have Crusader Strike as the 41-point talent. It was the improved. It was the 3% crit buff to Judgment of the Crusader. Right. Why was that such an uphill battle for you to push through?
So the early beta incarnation of the Paladin was very much placeholder. A lot of the early classes, sort of before they hit, final testing, had a lot of placeholder abilities. Well, he needs buttons to push while he's running around, but we're not quite ready with their full systems. So a lot of people just had buttons to push, right? And that's exactly what those abilities were. And once the Seal and Judgment system came to light, we wanted that entire system to be sort of all-inclusive. And the previous strikes that weren't connected to that system no longer fit within that mold. So they would have felt really odd, next to all the other abilities.
Right.
So that's why they were removed. But yeah, people missed them. And I was okay with it because it was beta. But
keep in mind, it was also in the original manual as well. Because that was based on the beta. So that's why people were so confused. Even if they didn't play on the beta, they got the game. They're like, well, where are my strikes?
Yeah, that was really bad because Brady Games built their entire strategy guide around old information because they had to get it printed and get it on shelves before the game went live. So by the time the manual, the Brady Games strategy guide came out, it was horribly outdated.
So can I just touch on that? Did you ever have at any point consideration of a live version with seals, judgments, and a potential strike all in the same package for vanilla?
No. Once we moved into the seal judgment system, everything had to work within that little engine. It was one of those systems that I thought was pretty good, but it definitely had some issues. So didn't have enough time to tweak it and iterate on it and really perfect.
Kevin, hearing what Theloras just said, and I've got no doubt Theloras has got a bunch of very, very technical questions for you. He does a lot of work over there with the theory crafters on Paladins, but we're going to be touching on all the trees here and perhaps, look, I'll save the best for last. Let's deal with the Ret Paladins last because that's going to be some really, really juicy stuff. Let's kind of whiz through, if you will, not go too quickly, but let's talk about Prot and Holy. But I just think that these two probably won't have as much to say about Ret. But if I can jump in for the Prot Paladins, we've talked about this before and you've said that, look, if you had it your way, the plan was to make every spec in the game playable in endgame. Tell me what let you down. Obviously with Prots, the lack of taunt that came in Burning Crusade. We've asked before, we'll hammer it home again. How close did you guys get to actually pulling the trigger on taunt for Prot Paladins in vanilla?
How close did we get? Not very close. That was one of the things I was pretty stubborn about, holding out until I was able to put in the specific, unique gameplay design for each class and spec I wanted and to make sure they were different. I definitely knew. And this was an experience I learned with Crusader Strike. Once you pull something away, people get really unhappy, even if, you're trying to do something different with the design. So it was okay in beta. I felt it was not okay in vanilla to give them a taunt that was just like the Warriors, while they were waiting for their actual taunt. because that wouldn't have been something that went over well. So I held out on them, essentially, much to, Prot Paladins' disappointment. But I really wanted to get them in a different style of taunting. And also, just to talk about tanks in general, it was definitely a new experience learning how people were aggroing things and how people were managing threat and taunting, because there were some key differences from other games that in the way that people were playing World of Warcraft. In a lot of other games, like EverQuest was the big example, the warriors the tanks would not be the ones that pulled. They didn't have good, movement mechanics. They didn't have a lot of threat management after the fight started. And so it was better for like Feign Death classes and things like that to do the pulling that usually had some movement power. So we were also just trying to figure out how this new system people were using was going to work so that we could feed in different types of gameplay experiences across the tanks to make them, viable.
Okay. Now, we were talking a bit on the Discord recently about, sort of homogenization in a way, or making everyone able to do everything, and what you guys were intending to do. And I sort of did have that comment high in my mind that you mentioned, saying, look, we wish that all specs could have been, viable in endgame, or, really just in every part of the game, whether it's PvP or PvE, you could basically pop on a spec and you'd be good to go. Now, keeping that in mind, was there actually, if you could go back and do it now, would you want these Prot Paladins to be just as viable of a choice as a Prot Warrior, in that you would have no drama swapping out the Prot Warrior for the Prot Paladin? Or is that desire to sort of, it actually turned out being kind of cool that they were unique and niche in a way, even if they didn't have taunt, they had, some other abilities that made them cool in 5-mans?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think the ideal design that we strived for, and I would still strive for today, is that across the entire landscape of, tankable fights, across raids, dungeons, etc., anything else for group fighting, world bosses, things like that, you add up all the places where all the different tanks were desirable, and the numbers would come out pretty equivalent for different reasons. So they would each have their own unique mechanics. And then, at the end of the day, this was tankable by all three, but more desired, it was more desirable that you have this one particular type.
Now, I'll just ask a quick listener question. I've basically let people submit questions over the last week, and they've sent a shitload in for a bunch of different classes. Now, here's one of the Paladin ones, and this is from Rockmaster Volrat, who says this: since the Prot tree is supposed to be a tanking tree, and now I've already answered part of this question because he says, why didn't Paladins get any form of taunt? We've kind of addressed that. But he also says, why didn't Paladins get any kind of mana regen before Burning Crusade?
Oh, yeah. Well, a lot of systems did, or a lot of the classes didn't have their full mana systems working perfectly. And basically a mana system, like mana bars by themselves aren't very good mechanics. I think they're really dated, and they don't lead to a fun gameplay experience. But once you add abilities that help you regenerate, and you put in various mechanics under which, your mana bar sometimes gets depleted quickly, and then other times where it gets increased, I think you can create a fun system that has a lot of play in it. But not all the classes. Obviously, there's, we talked about the Druids and the Umkin, but a lot of classes didn't have fully featured systems that allowed for good gameplay and for long-term sustainability.
Okay. Theloras, have you got anything quickly on Prod?
Well, if I can just touch off on what you guys are just going off on, it kind of flows into Burning Crusade, though. Seal of Blood. Why was that horde only for the entirety of Burning Crusade when it was such a huge DPS increase? And because of the self-damage, all a healer had to do was keep hot on the Blood Elf Paladin, and they would regen mana.
Right. that was just a tuning issue. It was extremely thematic that the Blood Elf Paladins, who were, not a struggle thematically, but very different thematically, have something unique that fit in with their kit. But those types of mechanics are historically very difficult to balance because you either care about the health a lot and you can't use it, or you don't care about it at all and it's just a giant buff. And so those are typically the two scenarios. There's very little scenarios where it's like, oh, this is a really tight decision. It usually falls into one of those two categories. So, and how you tune it is based on the, frequency of those two possible scenarios. And so they're very difficult to tune, and we just flat out didn't get the tuning right. So, you're right that Seal of Blood just outperformed in a lot of situations that made it, one of those things that was highly desired on the other side, but it just didn't fit thematically on the other side.
What about seal twisting? With seal twisting, when Seal of Command received its 0.5 second delay in patch 1.11, it was there the whole time, but it wasn't actually discovered until mid Burning Crusade. Now, one of the dying questions I wanted to know is whether seal twisting was okay from your point of view, and if so, was it possible during vanilla by twisting Seal of Righteousness in with Seal of Command?
It would have never been okay. And I use that from an idealist standpoint. Like if I could have made everything perfectly, twisting would not have been an element on the Paladin with his auras or his seals. However, once we discovered there was some possibility, then the context becomes really important on, well, how are Paladins doing right now? Are they relying on that to get to the places they need to be? Is nerfing it without any other, replacement going to just send them back into being uninvited to everything? So, there's a difference between like me being able to create the ideal I want and also managing, the current situation of the Paladin. So yeah, in terms of ideal, no, that would not have been something I wanted in the game.
Okay. Now, guys, what we might do is we move on to the Holy Tree, and, one that people obviously were pretty damn happy with in the game. I don't see too many complaints at all coming in for Holy Paladins. People often say, best single target healer in the game. They're great. They get all that mana obviously charged back to them or afforded back to them with the crits and whatnot. So it's something that I think there's not a lot of flame and fury about. Kevin, do you pat yourself on the back? Job well done with the Holy Paladins?
I have a complaint about the Holy Paladins.
Go for it.
I want to play a Reddit, and I can't because everyone's making me play a Holy Paladin.
Shut the fuck up and heal, noob.
That's right. So, yeah, I mean, the problem with Holy Paladins wasn't that they were super effective, because they were super effective. That actually created a situation where when we looked across, all 9 classes and we tried to figure out in the patch cycle that was going to come up where we were going to do the big reviews, who are we going to hit first? Who's struggling the most? The Paladin got pushed back a little bit because the Paladin class was getting invited. He was present in every aspect of the game, for one reason or another. And so he was doing great in terms of the class itself. The individual specs were doing really poorly, but it was more important to us to make sure that each class was getting its day rather than each spec. So that was sort of a dual problem with Holy being so good, or Holy performing so well. And then the other aspect of Holy was that it wasn't really thematically appropriate for the Paladin to be way in the back with, plate mail and, throwing heals. So that also didn't live up to the class fantasy. I know when people talk about class fantasy and the Paladin, it's almost always about Reddited, but the Holy Tree also didn't, in my mind, live up to the class fantasy. I would much rather have him in the mix, swinging the hammer, that kind of thing, and then also healing through that, battle mechanic, essentially.
The way Divine Storm ended up being.
Right. More things like that. So,
Kevin, I've got a question that somewhat relates back to Holy in that, we've got Kev Tank in the chat who's been giving you a bit of tongue-in-cheek stick over the last few days about one of the comments you made recently with regards to how you wanted classes basically to fit a certain thematic. You wanted that class fantasy was almost sort of first and foremost in your mind when you were designing abilities and talents. Now, he hasn't slept a wink since you've said that. It has been eating away at him. But he raises up a decent question here because he says, like, again, he's sort of, again, tongue-in-cheek going, I've got a complaint about Holy Paladins. They're not thematic enough. And I guess the jibe there would be, when we think of Paladins, we don't think of the theme being standing in the back as a dress-wearing healer. Did you guys, like, when you were designing the Holy Tree, obviously must have anticipated that, the Paladin could take up this option and just be a healer. Did that feel thematic in any way?
Well, one of the reasons that he had such an efficient and fast heal was because we wanted to free him up for combat. We needed to free his mana bar and his time up for combat, which ended up just, again, pigeonholing him into, well, you're the best, most efficient single target healer, right? So, best of intentions, but we didn't actually play it out well enough in our testing and just in our minds, in our, mock-ups on how this was going to perform to really see how people were going to min-max the one aspect of it. So, and that became a game-wide problem. Priests had this problem with Shadow Word Pain. It's like, oh, you can't spend that mana on Shadow Word Pain. You got to save every drop of mana for healing, every global for healing. So,
one of the otherwise interesting ways that Paladins do have a way to heal is the Tier 1 Lawbringer 8 out of 8 set bonus, which is the AoE group heal. Now, one of the things that we've been trying to figure out is what was the proc rate at? Because originally it was raid wide, but then it was nerfed to group wide, and then I think the range and the proc rate was upgraded in order to balance it. Now, do you remember roughly where you kind of wanted that proc rate to be? Because, for example, it is incredibly effective in Naxxramas on Thaddeus and Lotheb, where a paladin can keep their entire group up and swing Nightfall, provide, group AoE heals, raid-wide DPS increase with the Nightfall, and it's like extremely efficient. What are your thoughts on that set bonus?
Well, as you mentioned earlier with Divine Storm, like you can see how later on we were adding abilities and things you could get within the game to correct some of these issues with how the Paladin was playing. And, depending on when those things came out, you asked what the proc rate was. I'm not sure. It could have been before we had a way of doing procs per minute or after, which would have changed how a lot of things worked. But yeah, in general, not only were the item guys trying to find cool things, cool mechanics to run by me on, what the class would want, and to make each, set desirable. But we were also taking the opportunity to sort of get into the game, class changing mechanics that Paladins could get, or whatever classes could get to meet the needs that they had right then that were pressing for the content they were trying to do. So some of that was intentional, in that old school, game design way. You get the fire protection potion right before you fight the fire guy,
Right. And one of the other pushbacks that I and other Paladins have is for example, let's focus on Lawbringer again, the re-itemization of the stats on it. Because originally it was quite good for Prot and Ret. And then I think it was patch 1.5 or 1.6. It changed to when you added plus healing to it. Problem with that stat re-itemization is if it was, because at that point the game for Holy Paladins was gearing more towards, hey, you're just going to stand in the back and spam Flash of Light.
Right.
The itemization that it was changed to was actually worse for Holy as opposed to Dungeon 5-man Blues with just straight healing, spell crit, what have you. Do you think that was a missed opportunity? And if you had to do it over again, would you go back to the original itemization of strength, agility, crit, and hit, for example, for tier 1?
Yeah, those are more item design questions, which wasn't.
Oh, okay.
But
Sorry.
I can. No problem. I can explain why some of those decisions might have been made.
Okay.
It could have been that one element was too strong, so it needed to be. We needed to take that power and shift it to somewhere else. Different types of heals, for example. It could have been that the gameplay that was created because one element was being stressed with boring. So again, flash of light spam versus like occasionally holy light or other types of healing. So it could have been changed to try to make the gameplay a little more diverse. It also could have been changed to make different attributes attractive for different reasons, to give them a little bit more balance in terms of what people were hunting down. So there wasn't just the one way to build, there were multiple ways to build. So those would have been the goals. But again, the context super important, right? And how they would have gone about trying to achieve those goals.
All right. Kevin, I'll jump in at this point, and we better get to the meaty part of the chat because we'll run out of time otherwise. But let's start talking Ret Paladins, and this is probably the one that everyone's been waiting for. Theloras, right. I'm sure you've got a couple of. I should have warned you. Sorry, Kevin. Theloras, as I said, he knows his stuff, and he's got some very intensive questions.
Well, like I said, I invaded his Twitch stream a few times, and I pestered him with some questions while he was playing another game. Full disclosure. Full disclosure.
Well, I'll start you out, and then Theloras, you can obviously have a back and forth with Kevin about this one with Rets, because you guys, know a lot more about it obviously than I do. But Kevin, the really interesting thing for me is you say that you played a Ret, you love Rets, you had your Paladin, you had your Mage. Those were the two classes that you spent a boatload of time with, obviously amongst the others because you were designing them all, but these were your two great loves. So knowing that you were playing a Ret Paladin and knowing that that has turned into perhaps the most complained about spec in the game, people might be saying to you, Kevin, what the hell? It's like Et tu, Brute. You stabbed me in the back. What's going on?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. It gave me a lot of insight on, because people have been talking about viable versus
optimal. And,
obviously that's a big discussion point. So it gave me a lot of insight playing a Reddit on the difference between those things and the perception and how crazy perception gets about those things. Cause I didn't raid at the highest levels, but I did all the dungeons, for the most part. Yeah, I can't think of a vanilla dungeon I didn't do. And it was as Ret. So, and I was never shamed or shunned or anything like that. And nobody knew who I was or anything like that. I was just one of the guys, hanging out. And there were so many situations in which I could be successful and as the Redditan without, again, until, high-end competitive scenes. And so, yeah, it gave me a lot of insight into player perception on how quickly it changes once it gets to the competitive levels, right? But I was playing from a standpoint of the solo guy, the guy trying to make social connections to see how good the game was at creating those environments, how successful each group could be in terms, or each class and spec could be in terms of fun, and making sure that the game was healthy in all of those different areas. And I felt like it was pretty healthy. And the difference between what people want to accomplish at the high end and how much they talk about things on the forums versus like what everyone else is doing in the game is pretty pronounced, right? Because most of the people aren't talking on the forums. They're just running around having a good time. And, obviously the loudest people are the most hardcore people that are trying to, progression rate through the game, where specs like the Redditan don't, get invited as frequently. So I'm really curious. I know the stigmas will come back in Classic, where people will be very aware of them, especially amongst all the private server people that have been playing the private servers for a lot. But I'm really curious about the crowd that come in sort of fresh and aren't super aware of all of that stuff and how that manifests.
They're untainted by all the previous knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. Just, a fresh, will they come to the same conclusions? Will they come to different conclusions? Like what will be the new stigma essentially?
One of the interesting things I remember from a former prot paladin who tried to fight the good fight is He's like, dude, on retail, I was the main tank for my guild.
Right.
Can't do it here.
Right.
I just can't do it.
Druid tanks, Paladin tanks, like a lot of people did a lot of things outside of, the hyper competitive. And so, yeah, I'm really curious to see how people, muddle their way through this stuff in Classic again.
For sure.
From that next generation standpoint.
Definitely. Theloras, look, mate, you've got a couple of minutes here. Think of your top 1 or 2 rec questions. You've got Kevin here. You've got a captive audience. Go for it.
Okay. As a shout out to Exodia and Despotus, one of the interesting things that we've discovered is spell damage stacking and melee haste and Seal of Righteousness along with procs. We're getting like 16 to 1700 DPS. And the item or the weapon that comes out as best in slot forever is Manual Crowd Pummeler from Nomergon. Do you remember that weapon?
Your old friend that we brought up the other week, Kevin, with Taladrill, where we talked about it with druids.
It has that. It has three charges that so its base swing attack speed is 2.0, and it has 3 charges that last 30 seconds each that increase your attack speed by 50%. So it gets it down to 1.33. And then if you add the Blackwing Lair Paladin Trinket, which increases your melee attack speed by another 25%. Like it gets stupid high. And then you use Seal of Righteousness, and you use Shadow Oil, and you have life stealing, and you have proc items like the Red Whelp gloves, like proc trinkets. So it's like super, super fast. Were you aware of that being an alternative DPS style, or was Seal of Command, Ret Noob, slow 2-hand weapon, that was what you were looking at?
Okay, so this is a great question. And it speaks some to the psychology of the player. Most players that are attracted to 2-handed weapons in terms of their style love 2-handed weapons because of the giant crits they get to see, right? That massive burst damage when they swing that thing. And so that's what they're looking for. And so, swinging fast for reliable damage is not exciting, right? Until you look at somebody who's trying to do the most damage mathematically, over a 5 or 8 minute fight. Then that gets really exciting for some people. But, to be honest, like I was so sensitive about the difference between righteousness and command that I had our technical designer run the numbers on those 2 things. It must have been once a month. Like,
are you serious?
I was all over the guy, because there was so much debate on, and usually it fell in with Seal of Command. But the design intent was always Seal of Command is great for short fights and for PvP, where burst is really good. And righteousness is better for long-term fights. And so once you got into a situation where you were banging on a boss for more than a couple minutes, righteousness should take over. And so I'm not surprised at all to hear that people found ways of leveraging the advantages of righteousness with the right setup so that it became much better. Because we were always pushing righteousness a little bit here and there, trying to get it to get back into people's minds as like a competitive DPS source, right? The excitement again was so much on the command side that people didn't want to even believe it.
Do you remember, cause one of the things that we looked at that was part of the Paladin revamp in 1.9 was making Seal and Judgment of Righteousness able to trigger procs. And then that was removed in 2.1 when you nerfed Seal of Blood. Now, do you concretely remember if for sure 100% Seal of Righteousness was able to trigger procs like life stealing, like Shadow Oil, and other types of procs?
I don't. If I were pressed to guess, and obviously reasonably educated guess, they were built differently. The 2 seals internally, the way the code worked, they were built differently.
Right.
And the Seal of Command proc was considered a different attack. Whereas Seal of Righteousness was just adding damage to the original attack because of the way that command worked. So it's very likely that because of the code behind them is different, the things that happen based on those differences were also different.
Okay. Theloras, have you got one last ret question for him?
Well, I just wanted to, this is one of the questions I threw at him on his Twitch, is if you can illustrate for the listeners the fire proc items, that fiery retributor that was available from the demon boss in Zul'Gurub, the fiery plate gauntlets, and the blaze free medallion that dropped off a Kazakh. Those are all items that have an equip bonus that add fire damage to your melee attacks.
Right.
And this has been, basically, I wrote a bug report back on a private server, and it kind of broke the server because it led to the rise of fire rogues. And my question is, do you remember if those procs scaled with spell damage? Because then their instant cast spells, they would scale at the standard 43% of spell damage on your gear.
Probably not, or at least that was the intent, is that they not scale with spell damage, because there were too many variables within who was going to use them, what class they were, what access to gear and spell damage that they had through talents and other means to know, or to basically come up with a scaling modifier that was one size fits all. So a lot of those modifiers or spell damage scalers were turned off on item procs, but that's not to say that there weren't a couple of bugs in vanilla where that data was missed, or wasn't actually zeroed out correctly. So early on, a lot of them did have, like back in beta, a lot of them did have spell scaling because we probably thought, this is going to be super cool for people to build up spell damage and go to town with one of these fire axes or whatever.
Because they're equip bonuses, if a rogue or another dual wielder uses the sword, it gets added to both main hand and offhand. So rogues were one-shotting in Warsong Tier 3 warriors.
Yeah,
it was just stupid.
Dual wielding was always really tricky to balance because of issues like that.
All right, guys, I might jump in and we'll try and sort of wind this one down. Like, I know, Kevin, if I left Theloras in the room with you, you wouldn't get out for another 4.5 hours. So I'll try.
No, I'd take him out for beers.
Now, Kevin, just a couple of quick questions that I love to ask before we wind up. Real quick, can you think of anything that hit the cutting room floor for Paladins?
Obviously, we pulled quite a few things. So if you consider like Crusader Strike's an obvious one, that one hit the cutting room floor until later. And Holy Strike. But yeah, that's about it that I can think of.
No worries. And as always, if you could go into the Blizzard office back in time the day before release, I know we're talking hypothetically because the game turned out so well and you wouldn't change anything, but if you had to change or could change something with Paladins, would it be that ret DPS? What would it be?
It would have to be class fantasy, like putting in more things to get the Holy Paladin in melee, get the Reddit performing, and get the Prot Paladin more versatile in terms of tanking.
All right.
Just leave Reckoning at unlimited charges. Everyone's happy.
Sit down to collect them and off you go.
Very good. All right. One last question from the listeners, Kevin, and this one is a bit general, but it ties into something we've discussed before. So, here we go. Adventrium asks the following. I'd love to have you ask Kevin about the difference between Paladin and Shaman. What did he think turned out more how he wanted it to be in vanilla? And how did those two classes shape their respective factions?
I was pretty happy with, that's a great question. I was pretty happy they were distinct while still offering essentially the same types of buffs. The auras versus totems, one was centered around the character, the other was centered around where they placed the totem. So different kinds of positioning requirements. So they played differently, but ultimately a lot of the things that the classes offered were comparable. Obviously the things that weren't comparable were the things that stand out in most of our minds and were so hotly debated. But in terms of their play style, I thought it was great. And how it defined their factions, that's a great question too. The thing I like about the Shaman is it was just so perfect for the Horde. They were more offensive in terms of like that old bloodlust issue with the Horde and just being like aggressive and being more attacking minded and the Alliance being more defensive minded. So I thought that those played in really well with everything going on with the factions.
All good, mate. All good. Look, guys, we'll wrap up the Paladin call there. Theloras, I'll start with you, mate. Thanks so much for jumping and answering the call on this one. Obviously, you had some pretty technical questions there, but Kevin did really well. But thanks for asking those questions.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Kevin. I really appreciate it, my friend. Cheers.
And Kevin, thanks so much as always, mate. I really appreciate it. It's been fantastic.
My pleasure. Thank you, Josh.
Hi, everyone. Josh here. I just want to take a quick moment to remind you that while Countdown to Classic will always be a podcast you can get for free, if you do happen to really enjoy the show and find yourself always coming back for more, then please do check out the show's Patreon page to see how you can help keep the lights on at Countdown to Classic and even vote on show content as the show continues to bring you more and more classic WoW goodness. Alternatively, if monthly subscriptions aren't your thing, you can always visit the show's tip jar over at Ko-Fi, with that link being in the show notes and on the website too. Now, let's get back to the show. Alright, it's time for a Countdown to Classic 100th episode special. Now, a lot of you have been asking, Josh, 100 episodes, that's fantastic. What have you got planned for us? Surely you're doing something special. And I thought I'd have a bit of fun, get a bit tongue-in-cheek, and bring you this very special call with 4 amazing listeners on the line. What is the purpose of this call? Well, some of you hanging out in the Discord may have seen that I have been in 2 minds about what region I'm going to play WoW Classic on when the game releases. This has been a really, really tough decision. Now, as I was explaining to these guys just before, it seems like a foregone conclusion. Hey, I'm an Australian. There are probably going to be Oceanic servers. Of course I'll play on those. But in the last month, I've really come back and second-guessed that decision, and it's actually turned into much more of a 50-50 choice than I'd previously realized, because there are pros and cons to both choices here. Now, if I play on Oceanic servers, great. Low ping, easy raid times, it all lines up. I can make friends that I could potentially meet up with in real life. That's fantastic. However, with the North American servers, as the show has blown up in popularity, I've made a lot of friends with some North Americans. I'd like to play with a lot of these North American friends that I've made. And people say, that's what WoW's all about, Josh. It's community, it's playing with mates. That's what you do. And not to say I haven't made mates on the Oceanic servers, but I've probably made a few more in North America. Now, it's a tough choice. So what do I do to balance these two things? How do I make this decision? Well, we're having a bit of fun here on Countdown to Classic. Now, some of you may be familiar with an old TV show called The Dating Game, where you had a bachelor or a bachelorette placed behind the wall, and they would throw questions, some cheeky questions, to 3 potential suitors. That's exactly what we're doing here today, but we're doing it with 4. We've got 2 great Oceanic listeners, 2 great North American listeners. They will represent their regions and try to woo me with some fun answers to some tongue-in-cheek questions that I've got. So let's get to the introductions, everyone. Let's start with North America. And speaking of North, how are you, mate? How's things?
I'm doing great, man. Glad to be back.
It's good to have you, man. This is going to be a bit of fun. And joining him, we've got a resident of the Countdown to Classic stream. I feel like we've met, even though we haven't talked in person before. Batlord, how are you, mate?
Good. It's good to be here, Josh. Thanks for having me.
It's so great to have you. Thanks for jumping in when I was looking for someone. I do appreciate that. And over on the other side, the competition, if you will, the rowdy Australians. Let's start with Locke. How are you, mate?
I'm good, man. It's good to be back.
It's good to have you back so soon. You were just on last week and now you're back again.
Amazing.
And joining him, the one, the only return caller, Auntie. How are you, mate?
Okay, man. How's it going?
Good, good. Now look, guys, I've got some questions for you. We're going to do the theater of the mind. Let's imagine that wall is up. Imagine you've never seen me before. I am a mysterious partner that you are hoping to woo to your server. You're like, come play with us, man. We're the best. But let's see how you guys go in wooing me to your server. So let's go through everyone's answers with question number 1. And that is as follows. And I'll ask this to you, North, to kick off. Bachelor number 1. To get to know each other as adventurers, where would you take me on our first date? Adventure.
Well, of course, Ungoro Crater. There's scenic volcano views to die for, there's dinos to farm, and plenty of level 48s to grind for Phase 2 of Classic.
I do like that. It sounds like a very picturesque place. Sort of the tour of Jurassic Park, if you will. That sounds kind of appealing. All right. Well, let's see what the Aussies have for me, and I'll turn to you, Auntie, and I'll ask you the same question. Where would you take me on our first adventure?
Loch.
I prepared the answer for this one.
Okay, Loch, you jump in then, mate.
Obviously, I'll take you to the most romantic place in the entire world of Warcraft, Josh. Black Rock
Mountain.
Any place more romantic. We can stroll along the lava hand in hand. We can sit beside the piles of ash as we stare into each other's eyes. And finally, and most importantly, we can lay amongst the corpses of those who we ganked earlier as we stare up into the volcanic sky.
Now, Locke, I'll press you a little bit here with a follow-up. Is it fair to say that things get a little hot in Black Rock Mountain?
I think a little is an understatement, Josh. It's very hot in Black Rock Mountain.
Excellent. All right, Batlord. Now it's your turn to return serve. Where would you take me on our first adventure?
Well, Josh, I know you're a huge fan of the Undercity, so obviously I would take you down to the beautiful halls of the Undercity, where the slime runs like champagne. There's no shortage of loose swinging body parts, dim and sexy lighting, and of course, cannibalism. So strap yourself in for a good time.
I love it because, as you guys might know, I'm very much so planning on rolling an undead. So maybe it's like Dorothy clicking her heels together and saying there's no place like home because the Undercity is very cozy. I like that. Very good. The North Americans coming out swinging, although I did like that Black Rock Mountain one. Now, Auntie, you tried to shirk this one, but if I had to press you, off the top of your head, can you save Australia here? Where would you take me on our first adventure?
Well, I'd definitely take you to Red Ridge Mount. It's the first contested zone. You're just contesting my heart.
Very good, very good. An interesting opening from both sides. Thanks, gents. Well, good to see that you're getting into the swing of things. Now, let's start with question number 2, and I'll begin with the Aussies. And Locke, I'll start with you on this one, considering you just ended the last one. How about this? If you were questing with me, what would you do to spice up that questing relationship?
Well, I thought about this one and I decided that by far the easiest way to, spice this up was I would actually become a quest giver and I would give you the most epic of quests. Escort me to Mount Hyjal. Obviously, that's not going to be an easy task and it'll mean you'll have to spend an exceptionally large amount of time with me trying to get to this location that is actually inaccessible by normal means in the world of Warcraft vanilla.
Are you trying to say that if we were to hang out together, you'd have me trying to squeeze into places that might be hard to get into?
Why, of course, Josh.
Very good. Now, North America, Batlord, how about you? What are you going to do to spice things up in this questing relationship?
Well, since I know that we are both rolling undead priests, I would sacrifice and roll holy, and I'd let you live your dreams as the shadowiest shadow priest that ever lived. No heal shall ever touch your mana pool, and you will be the king of our damage meters.
That sounds very convenient. I appreciate that acquiescence to my playstyle. Very good, Batlord. All right, Auntie, what have you got? Spice me up.
Well, I'd bring a staff of conjuring because I always like to wine and dine my dates.
Very good. A staff of conjuring. Now, I'm going to have to pick you up on this. You mean a staff of conjuring?
Potato.
Oh, you're the worst. Very good. Very good. Okay. Now, North, I'll let you end this one. What have you got for me to spice things up?
well, things can get a little sweaty if you're out there grinding in the world, two men just out there together, alone, hours on end. So, we could, get down to our skivvies, take a nice dip underneath the Thandle stand, and what's more spicy than prying a love letter from the cold, dead, submerged hands of Sully Baloo?
I like it. Something to think about. Very good. Now, you guys are making this a tough decision. There's some very quality answers coming through. Now, I'll just shout out Tsunami in Twitch chat, who mentioned her answer to question number 1 in terms of where she would take me on our first adventure would be to the Lion's Pride Inn to show me all kinds of adventures. And I imagine on a certain server that would be very spicy. Now, guys, let's turn back to you. Question number 3. Auntie, some say chivalry is dead in World of Warcraft. How would you go about proving that wrong with me?
Oh, well, I'm thinking of playing a paladin, so I'd bubble you and I'll take the repair.
Ah, very good. You can bubble me any day. North, how about you?
Well, unlike 99.9% of raids where I scream at people that they don't deserve water and that my time is better spent, doing damage and that their puny mana pools can suck less savory parts of my body, I'd make you all the water that you wanted. Just for you.
That's very polite of you. A absolute water dispenser on demand sounds fantastic, particularly considering I'll be rolling a caster. Now, Loth, what have you got for me? What chivalrous act?
Obviously, I would take you to Angora Crater, and I would get you the most romantic of mounts, a devil saw. And while you rode that devil saw, I would shine your armor as it devours the Alliance for you.
Very good. Would you help me skin that devil saw when I was done with it and decided to kill it?
You would kill my devil saw? You monster!
Hey man, it's worth a lot of money. Now, Batlord, let's end this one off. What chivalrous act would you show?
Well, I would roll any profession that would complement your favorite play style. You want to be an engineer? I'll mine for you all night long, baby. Wanting to make potions? I'll gingerly pick each and every flower in your bag, and you get all of my storage space.
Wow, Batlord, you are really going above and beyond to make my life easier in World of Warcraft Classic. I am picking up what you're putting down. All right, question number 4, guys. North, which World of Warcraft item best describes what it's like to get hot and heavy adventuring with you in Azeroth?
Well, obviously Black Mage Weave leggings, and if anyone has seen the boy spanks present on my streams from time to time, you know why.
Very good. Now, Loth, which item for you?
Well, it was quite obvious, Josh. Obviously, there's already an item that describes exactly what we'd be like together, and it is called the Steamy Romance Novel. So these novels are basically just a summary of our stories together, and I've actually prepared a passage to read out to you in the audience.
I love it.
So, despite the statement, her words seemed to do the trick. Marcus smirked ruffishly as he adjusted his leg plate. Well, aren't you the only gifted one? Silence penetrated the room with palpable force as the conversation shifted to the language shared by all races of Azeroth. Minutes became hours until their passionate dialogue was interrupted by lightning streaking from the cloudless sky, thunderously slamming into the lake's surface and bathing them in the steam. Is something wrong? Marcus asked. No, Marcus. You're just off to a great start. And the remaining pages have been thoroughly destroyed by the elements.
Yeah, I was going to say thoroughly destroyed or stuck together. That was hot. All right. Jesus. Now, Batlord, what have you got for me?
Oh, I would have to say anathema for sure. Because when you need the heals, I'll always have your back. But when it's time to melt faces, we'll get dark together.
Very nice. And to round this one off, Auntie?
I just reprogrammed the broken I win button because we all know where this decision will end.
Now, those are some fantastic answers. I'm a bit surprised that no one went with manual crowd pummeler, which would have been my choice, but very, very good.
You put that in suggestion.
I did use that as a suggestion, but I that doesn't preclude people from using it. I thought that was a good one as well. But you guys came up with some fucking great ones. Now, shout out to Voxy53 in Twitch chat, who came up with a fantastic answer for the chivalrous act, because he says that he'd give me every chest without rolling for it because I'm a perfect 100. I think that's a good one. I like that. Now, guys, let's move on to the Australians. Lochth, I've never been to Molten Core, but I heard it can get a little hot. Would that be the case with you? And if so, why?
The reason why is quite obvious, Josh, and I really shouldn't say that for the stream. But basically, the heat created between us would make Molten Core seem like winter spring.
Very good. All right, Batlord, how about you?
Oh, absolutely. Molten Core is where you get some really powerful tier gear early on. And so when we're rolling through MC together, I'll loan you all the DKP you need to get all those fresh pieces of gear.
I like it. I like it. Now, Auntie, how would the Molten Core get even hotter with you and I?
Oh, I would ensure we'd bring a raid full of frost mages just to make it extra steamy.
Very good. And sorry, North, did we get you yet?
Not quite, because I'd conjure some water as the actual resident mage, and we would steam up the room right behind Golemag the Incinerator, because everyone knows that the best spot to view Ragnaros from is right behind little Golemag.
What, generally viewing Ragnaros from behind is the way to do it, is it?
The only way.
The only way. Very good. Things are getting steamy in here. All right, guys, let's cool it down a little bit. Let's wipe the sweat from our brow and ask this one. Lochth, many residents of Azeroth like to charge into battle with a little something to say. What would our battle cry be?
Obviously, our battle cry would be for Oceania.
For Oceania.
That is exactly where you'll be rolling after this conversation.
Very good. North, what have you got for our battle cry?
It's the NA motto, really. We would chant for fun, because that's really the mantra of NA gaming, unlike the offspring of Europe that you would have in these oceanic servers full of toxicity and try-hard min-maxing. We would stroll through the land together.
I like that. I like that. That's very sweet. Showing your tender side there, North, a side of you I've never seen before. I like that. Now, the Australians. You've just heard that. So, Auntie, what would our battle cry be?
I don't know what I usually shout in the heat of the moment, but at least on an oceanic server you'd be shouting with everyone and not 250 milliseconds.
Oh, that hurts. The truth hurts with that one. Batlord, what would our battle cry be?
Well, as two undead shadow priests, I think we would shout, no heals, no feels, our shadow word pain is fucking for reals.
I like it. A bit of rhyme always helps. Excellent. All right, guys, we got our last two questions. So here we go with the penultimate one. North, someone says, Anal Thunder Fury, blessed blade of the Windseeker. How do you reply to woo me?
I'd close my eyes slightly, turn to you, and in a slight whisper, ask for consent.
As it should be done. Lochth, what have you got?
Josh, I'd walk up to you, look you lovingly in the eye. I'd lean toward you and softly whisper in your ear, anal eviscerate.
Anal eviscerate. Very good. Okay. Batlord, how about you? What would you say to woo me?
I think I'd say, oh shit, I didn't realize we were questioning the Barons.
That's going to be a tough one to follow, Auntie. Now, finally, someone says Anal Thunder Fury, blessed blade of the Windseeker. How do you reply to woo me?
Your mum likes my blessed blade of the Windseeker.
As we usually see in chat. Very good. Boys, this has been a showdown. Now, I think someone's in the lead, and I'm not going to hint who, but you can probably guess. Last question to try and get me to play on your server. Let's start with you, Lochth. It's been a long and hard day grinding mobs, and I'm losing interest. what do you do to get me back in the mood?
I would take you to the classic version of Moonguard, Josh. And as you know, what happens on Moonguard stays on Moonguard.
Until I tell people about it on the podcast. Yes, absolutely. Now, Batlord, what have you got? What would you do to get me back in the mood after that long, hard day grinding?
Josh, I would make the ultimate sacrifice and spec deep into discipline just to get you that buff so we can keep going and you'll never have to drink.
Very
Ultimate
good.
sacrifice.
Very good. I think Christian Grey specs deep into discipline as well, but don't quote me on that one. Now, Auntie, what have you got for me?
Woo! Naked Party at Gold Chart in. Sorry, I got caught up in Locke's answer.
That's all right. That's all right. You can piggyback off of that one. And we've got the final one coming in. North, you're going to round out this call. How are you going to get me? It's been a long, hard day grinding mobs, and I'm starting to kind of lose interest. What do you do to get me back in the mood?
Well, I'm something of a hardcore raider, so I make sure to have my consumes beforehand. So, of course, I'd break out the fish oil that I'd been saving from Westfall Burlocks to get a little wet and wild.
Ooh. Boys, you have made this a tough one. Now look, this is the point of the show where it turns back to the bachelor or bachelorette to make their decision from these amazing answers that we've just heard. And if you picture somewhat of, a vision of me standing there with my one rose left to give, if you've seen The Bachelor before, even though we're mixing up the dating games here. I've got North America on my left. I've got Australia on my right. I've got one rose between the two. And I will be happy to announce that I choose North America.
No!
Yeah, baby!
Oh, get fucked!
Guys, look, based on your answers, North, Batlord, you killed it. You sucked me over there. As some might call it the dark side, I'm going to call it home from now on. I'm sorry, Australia. Please love me. Lock the Auntie. You guys have been great, but they did enough to tip me. I know. I'm so sorry now.
You made the right decision.
This is going to be
not dead servers that will last longer than 2 months after launch.
Well, this is going to be a tough one a bitter pill.
Will be the most popular ones, as is tradition.
It's going to be a bitter pill to swallow for some Australians, and I do apologise to my fellow countrymen. I'm not trying to sell you out. I am not any less patriotic, but the long and short of it is I've made a shitload of friends over on the North American servers. There's some people that I really, really want to play with. Not to suggest that I don't want to play with guys like you, Locke, Anti, you guys are amazing, and I may well have an alt on an Oceanic server, but I think my heart lies with North America. It's the right decision. It might be problematic when it comes to rating, but I think it's going to give me the best social experience. And as we say, that's what World of Warcraft is all about. So congratulations, North America. I will be playing with you when World of Warcraft Classic drops, and I couldn't be more excited. Guys, thanks so much for doing this. I hope you had a bit of fun with this. North, always a pleasure, man.
Thank you again. Always happy to be on.
And Batlord, it was your first time. I hope we were gentle.
Oh no, I've been looking forward to this for so long. I'm so glad. I just got off work. I literally got the message. So stoked I could be here.
It was great to have you. Now, to my Australian compatriots, I know you must be absolutely gutted, as we say in this country. Locke, I'm sorry, mate.
I'm so disappointed. I thought you were cool, man. I thought you were cool.
My mom tells me I'm cool, so that's all I'll have to go with in the meantime. But also, Auntie, mate, I'm sorry. I'll make it up to you somehow.
Edit your podcast well, because if I hear one mention of lag at any point, I will ridicule you until the day that I die.
More than fair. I am banned from bitching about lag when the game comes out. Absolutely.
I can't wait for a rogue to kill you from 15 yards away.
It's going to happen. It's definitely going to happen. All right, guys. Look, thanks so much for that, and I'll speak to you all later.
Thanks, Josh.
Have a great one, dude. Thanks again.
Thank you.
I really hope you all enjoyed that call. I had a lot of fun recording it, and the guys were such good sports about it all. Please do remember that people like North, you can find them over at Twitch. They're streaming as well. I'll put the links in the show notes, but be sure to check the show notes every episode to see if you can find the people who appeared on the episode elsewhere and support them and get more of them. So please check that out, guys. But for now, let's get to the next call. All right, it's time for another Countdown to Classic call, and I'm joined by three special guests today that I've been really excited to talk to. We have members of the guild Onslaught. So whether or not you've heard of Onslaught, you're about to find out a whole lot about them, and there's a couple of points of interest about this guild that really sort of, piqued my interest in what their hopes and dreams are for Classic. I was brought I was pointed out to Onslaught by Ale, obviously a regular contributor of the show. He said, hey, have you heard of this guild? Might be some people that you might want to talk to. And I looked into it, and absolutely, I'm dying to know a bit more about these guys. So I want to welcome firstly the guild leader of Onslaught, Faye. How are you?
I'm doing great, man.
Thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And you've brought with you a couple of mates, maybe some senior members of the guild. We've got Clevis. How you going, man?
I'm doing great. Yeah, thanks for having us on.
My pleasure. And finally, Smooth. How are you, mate?
Doing well.
Excellent. Now, look, Faye, I'm going to throw to you to start this call off as the guild leader. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who Onslaught are?
I'll delve into the history of our guild a little bit, and then I'll pass it over to Smooth because I think it'll transition. So a little bit about me. I played Classic World of Warcraft when it came out in 2004. I was beyond legal drinking age. I was born in the early 80s. A lot of the leadership was born in the early 80s. The guild where we come from.
Excellent.
Right. And so my brother is a little famous in the Blizzard community. His name's Alk for being the world's first Diablo 3 Paragon 100.
Okay.
He beat a team of 2 Europeans and 2 Chinese that were all trying to do it. Before him, he did it by himself, and it was Smooth. Smooth convinced Al Kaiser to stream, and that set off his streaming career. And it was his Twitch chat that got us to play on Chronos. Backing up a little bit, my brother was the guild master. Al Kaiser was the guild master of Onslaught until about 2010-ish. And within Onslaught, we played on Skull Crusher, and Gummy was one of the within Onslaught. Now Smooth McGroove, if your listeners don't know, he's famous on YouTube. He does acapella video game covers. He's got hundreds of millions of views. You should check him out. We all live in the same, city. And Al Kaiser went to high school with Smooth, and Smooth was always trying to get us to play Scriptcraft. I quit World of Warcraft in 2007, early in TPC, and I hadn't played World of Warcraft in 7, 8, 9 years. When Chronos came out, it was Smooth. We went out to breakfast, and he was like, look, Nostalrius had just come out, had been a month old. He's like, there's a better, more well-scripted server called Chronos coming out. If you guys want to play that, now's the chance. And then between everyone in Al Kaiser's chat and Smooth, it just happened. And, even though I hadn't played World of Warcraft in 8 or 9 years, we started the guild back up, and it's been history ever since.
Excellent. Now, people watching on stream will have just seen me started smiling and sort of almost holding back a bit of laughter there, just because when you mentioned who Smooth was, I had no idea coming into this call. And you just said, yeah, he's got that YouTube channel. He's quite popular over there at YouTube. And Smooth, I'll just turn over to you now because I just want to let you know, again, I had no idea that was you. And I have listened to your Mega Man a cappella videos so many times it's out of control. So I just want to say a big thank you for putting out that out there. And it's so wild to have you in on this call. But just to piggyback off of what Faye was saying, one of the things, well, actually, let me just ask, I don't want to sort of, miss that tangent. How do you balance the sort of your World of Warcraft game time with the management of the YouTube channel?
It's a little difficult, but the cool thing about doing YouTube is that you kind of make your own schedule. So that's the easy part, but that's also the hard part because I like to kind of go hard at whatever I do, whether it's music or games. That's the short and simple answer.
Fair enough. All right. Clevis, let's turn to you, man, because the one point that Ale highlighted to me that really grabbed my interest in this interview with you guys is that he said, hey, Josh, try and get a hold of these Onslaught guys. They've got this website, and as per their website, they say the following. Onslaught transcends platitudes of hardcore and elite and is a tier above that. And that's really what got my sort of juices flowing, going like, oh, fuck yeah, this sounds awesome. These guys are obviously really, really trying to be on the cutting edge of content and pushing this rating content and going for world first and whatnot. But tell me about the attitude that it takes to be a member of Onslaught.
Jeez, did we really write that? No, I'm kidding. No, yeah. Onslaught for me has always kind of been a private server thing. Like these other two other guys that I'm here with, they go back to 2004 with this guild. They caught my attention as these players who were obsessed with improving. And that really is at the heart of it, is this sort of iteration approach to WoW, right? You look at a problem, whatever that problem is. In this case, obviously it's World of Warcraft, but you decide how are we going to approach that? And, you test your strategies, and did that work? Did that not work? You analyze it. You come at it the next week, you improve it. And just constantly doing that is, I'm, not to insult anyone else, but it's something that Onslaught does so well. It's what brought me to the guild. It's what's kept me in the guild. And it's been such it's been so successful. Like, we're talking about, a guild that wasn't really focused on being the best. Now this is going back to 2014, Faye? Is that right? 2015?
Yeah, 2014. Just to back up, Cletus, I don't mean to hijack you, Cletus, but just to give a little bit of context here. When we hit the private server scene in 2014, Smooth had been on Scriptcraft for 3-4 years before that. And he had some connections. He ran guilds on Valkyrie and others. The meta had completely changed. I came from a completely orthodox 2005, 2006 mindset. I play Shaman. I have, and this is about to sound really no life, but I have over 7 days played as Shaman and Shaman only. I'm able to play the game at work. So I've been hammered. And, my brother and I, we grew up in a household where, like, we got we played Magic the Gathering in 93, 94 when it came out. My brother was like only in the 2nd grade. I taught him how to play it. And we played text pitching games on like Telnet in 94, 95, the precursors to MMOs. So we had been theory crafting and doing that kind of stuff for a very, very, very long time. And I was full with the iterations in 2014 of what had come from the previous servers, Valkyrie, Warsong, Alakir, Nost, all Scriptcraft, all the previous servers. But it wasn't enough. And we would raid, and I would go through the combat logs, and with new technologies like Twitch and better recording and everything, we would just sit there for 5-6 hours and just try to make the raid more aggressive and faster and better than the previous. Because the progression thing never really struck me. I think we had server BWO 9th, server Cthulhu 5th or 6th. It just wasn't a focus in the guild. But what was a focus was doing more and more and more damage on a daily basis. And Cletus was in a different guild. The Chronos 1 population, the Horde North American population, could facilitate about 2 guilds. And that second Horde guild always kind of just was a rotation. And then Cletus's guild paradigm fell apart. And I was very happy to just absorb everyone in there and bring them into our framework and say, look, here's what we're looking for, man. We're just looking to improve on a better level on a weekly basis. If you can bring that, then we're good to go.
Okay. Smooth, I'll cut to you and ask, what would be your interpretation of what makes the members of Onslaught a cut above the rest? Why do you think that this particular guild has been such a great home for you, and you found like-minded individuals who, even if it is being tongue-in-cheek, when you say things like, there's elite and then there's us. Tell me why you feel that way.
The major difference is really the leadership. Faye is very, very intense with the way that he goes about the structure of the guild. And what the guild wants to do, but in a way that is very conducive to downing content, improving damage numbers, improving healing numbers, improving tanking aggro, all this stuff. that's the short version of it. On a more broad scale, it's kind of the guild philosophy that everyone that joins Onslaught knows kind of the way that basically the vibe of the guild, which is that everyone is of a like mind. Everyone has, the same goals. If you don't have the same goals, then it's open for discussion, but it's just, it's a very, very solid framework, very different from any other guild I've been in World of Warcraft, even some other server first guilds on live.
Right. And the whole purpose of World of Warcraft, it's a game. It's for your enjoyment. Anyone can play. There's no wrong way to play a World of Warcraft, whether you're perpetually leveling to level 30 and just collecting herbs, or you're trying to do high-end PvP or high-end raiding. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters really is that everyone you play with share the same goal. Like if we define, enjoy the game, these parameters, and you're in alignment with that, then that's perfect. We want you.
Now, Faye, I'll stick with you and just sort of say one thing you mentioned earlier really sort of hit home with me, because I think it's a great concept to drive home. And, some people will maybe address later on sort of what people's opinions of Onslaught may be. But you mentioned that the guild really is driven home, or perhaps founded on that pursuit of improvement. And I think that's a really, really great principle to put forward, perhaps as the number one factor that the guild takes into account in terms of always looking to get better and better and find new and wonderful ways in which to not only become better players, but maybe approach the content. So one thing we haven't really, you very, very lightly addressed, but in keeping that principle in mind, what are some of the milestones that the guild has hit at this point that you're quite proud of as a guild leader?
Some of the milestones. Well, I really like challenging the orthodoxy. A lot of people just repeat the same strategies or methods of playing, or the same rotations, et cetera, et cetera. And to give an idea, in 2014, the orthodoxy with tank was very much a protection specs, shield slam, Alcor Sunraiser, these very tried and true methods. And they're good traditions to have, and they are. Well, we started hitting a wall, especially as Horde, and it became very apparent that faster and to do more damage was going to increase more increases into TPS. And I've always been very adamant against, like, if you're a tank in Onslaught, like, your job is not to protect. Get protection, get defense, get all that stuff out of your mind. I play healer, and I play a very aggressive and experienced healer. And I would tell the tanks, do not worry about your health. Your job is not to stay alive. My job is to make sure you stay alive. And I'm going to work with the healing team to make sure that you have maximal uptime in you doing damage, and you don't have to defense at all. So in 2014, moving into 2015, we just started stripping all the defense off. It was like, you're not getting enough rage. You're not getting enough rage. Get rid of the 440 defense. Let's drop it down. 375, 330. Let's start, like, I don't care. Let's wear leather, put Titanics, put Lionhearts on. And we just kept pushing TPS. And I'm 100% confident we were the first guild to start the dual tanking thing. We started that in BWL in the early days, tanking Veils, Trials, and some of the other ones. We did it in an environment where the guilds on Nost, we had people that were playing in both Dream State and Nope. So they were streaming, and we were streaming, and all these other guilds were streaming. We kind of knew exactly what everyone were doing. But it's fascinating that 5 years later, the dual wield tanking has become such almost an orthodox.
Yeah, just to build on that. I mean, I hear, and not to dump on anyone, but I hear, people talking about, the new meta and we've been doing this for 6 months. We've been doing this for 9 months. And it's like, well, that's great. We've been doing this for 4 years.
Now, one of the things that's being brought up, and again, I'm throwing him a lot of love because I'm so glad that he directed me towards you guys, is, listener Ale is pointing out that one of the things that you guys are known for, as, Faye has just mentioned, is perhaps that concept of innovation, and, perhaps trying to tinker with the way in which we think about certain encounters. Clevis, I'll throw to you for this one, and just sort of ask you, are there any other ways that you feel, Onslaught has helped change the minds of the player base about certain pieces of content? And also, why do you feel it's important for the World of Warcraft Classic player base to continually question or challenge the way in which they view content?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the things that I used to love, or that I do love about Onslaught, is that we kind of had a running joke that we were the most casual guild on the server, because our raids would go so quickly, right? So we would have to be raiding a total of like an hour and a half to get 4 raids done, kind of thing. And okay, that math doesn't quite work out, but you see where we're going with this. In terms of the actual time spent inside the instance, it was actually quite low. And that at the time, going back to 2014 here at least, was not a common orthodoxy to over prepare essentially and to iterate on every single encounter to get down to that level was not very common. And so we had this sort of mindset that at this point is sort of permeated through to most of these other guilds. And don't get me wrong, seeing what other guilds are doing with these things is great. It's very, it's very enjoyable for me to see kind of what other tanks and other guilds are able to do with some of these things. So that's awesome nowadays. But at the time, it just wasn't a thing.
Okay. Smooth, I'll turn to you, mate, and ask, obviously, I'm presuming, even though it hasn't been necessarily explicitly stated during this call, that you guys are very much so pushing for a bunch of world firsts once Classic comes out. Tell me why you think Onslaught has a great shot at realistically achieving a number of these world firsts. And I know we're not going to go too much into tactics. I know that every guild likes to keep a few aces up their sleeve, so don't feel like I'm pressing you for, exact. We'll get to that later in the call, perhaps talking some specific pieces of content or what have you without you guys sort of necessarily revealing the magician's trick. But tell me why just generally you think you guys have a serious best shot and why you should be taken seriously by the contenders as someone who's going to get that world first.
I would say it's innovation first and preparation second, and both of those just being, the ultimate goal of what's been discussed within Guild, what's been discussed ever since Classic WoW was announced. That was also the name of the game back on Chronos, and I think that's it. You put those two together. And you make those two work together. You have to have both. You can't just have one or the other and expect, to have like world first anything. You may get lucky, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Faye could probably elaborate more on that since he's been the master planner.
Well, not to interject too much, but, the world first rag kind of thing is that's kind of funny to me. That's actually not what we're going for.
Okay.
We are going for a week 1 rag kill, which is 100%. There's no question about if we can do it or not. Now, there might be a guild that can do it faster than us, and that's fine. But the reason we want to do a rag week 1 kill is just to have more loot.
Now, when you talk about that week 1 rag kill, you say obviously it's a foregone conclusion as far as you guys are concerned. Is that because, people, and again, I'm just going to play devil's advocate here, and I'm not necessarily questioning personally whether or not that can happen or not. I don't have the experience to seriously challenge that kind of statement, but I think some people might hear that and the generic response you'd think would be, oh, those private server players, they think it's going to be such a cakewalk, blah, blah, blah. But look, whether it is or it isn't, tell me what you would say to people who might scoff at week 1 rag. Come on, you seriously think that's going to happen? But you guys say, no, it's absolutely going to happen.
Well, to be honest, I'm not really religious in trying to convert people to how they're probably right. That the reality is they're more than likely right. A week 1 rag kill, it's just about numbers. Can you get enough people to 40 or 60 that fast? Can you get 40 people to level 60 that fast? And the reality is you got to have a lot of people. And the thing about Onslaught is I've always been very open. People would always come to me like, is it okay if I have an alt in this guild or an alt in that guild? And I was like, I'm not your boss, man. I'm the top guild servant. Like, I'm here to create a road. And if you guys want to travel on that road, that's great. If you want to do other things, that's fine. And so we networked, just naturally networked. We had people playing Alliance. We had people in other Horde guilds. We had people on other private servers. And after we quit in late 2017, a lot of our guys spread to the 4 winds and raided in TVC's private servers, Wrath private servers, and networked to the point where, in mid 2018, I wasn't going to play Classic at all, to be honest. And my brother was like, well, I'm going to play it. And then a lot of other people were like, oh, I'm playing it too. And I started shopping around for who's putting together a really aggressive, like, horde guild, like NA horde guild. And there was no, and so we had networked with, people that were, from Smooth's Valkyrie guild, the people from Grizzly, we're rolling with people from Progress that have done, server first rag, 9-day progress kill, Snide, the guy who maintained Grizzlies, rolling with us. He did it in 10 days. And we've discussed and talked to with their experience, and we kind of know what we're doing. And I spent the majority of 2018 working 12 to 16 hours a day, getting leveling down to obscene levels. And I've been sharing that with the guild, and we've been practicing and running drills. We've been doing this for months and months and months and months, to the point where I'm 100% confident we're going to have enough 60s in record times.
Okay. Smooth, let me ask you, because obviously we just heard about the practice and the amount of time that's being asked of members of Onslaught in order to get ready for these challenges that are coming your way in Classic. Talk to us about basically what Faye might ask of you guys, time-wise, commitment-wise, and attitude-wise. Like, I sort of sit here and picture, these, we're talking about, the 1 dozen, the 2 dozen top guilds in the world that, have pushed private server content for years and really know this, they know the encounters back to front as far as private servers are concerned. What does Faye sort of, whether explicitly or implicitly, say to you need to do to be a member of Onslaught? And tell us why it might be so hard to crack membership to this guild.
That comes down to the dedication. So the two things I said earlier, like innovation and like preparation, but like everyone that joins Onslaught, you have to be dedicated. You have to want to play. You have to want, first of all, you got to love the game. You got to love Classic WoW. You got to love the class that you're playing. And, are you dedicated enough to get a 60 within a week, even before a week, so that a week 1 rag can happen.
But is there any kind of like, you got to play X amount of hours per week, or you need to get, at least rank 14 before we'll take you seriously, or any kind of stuff like that?
I mean, there's a basic framework for release. Like again, we have been running a lot of drills, a lot of practice runs, on different characters to see how fast we can level 10, or level 12, level 20. Even some people are going as far as 40 or 60. And that's kind of the litmus test, I think. The people who are doing that, the people who are getting their numbers, who are, working to improve their play, and then, networking with others about that. Like that's kind of, that's so far been the litmus test, is like, how do you really want to do this?
Yeah, fair enough.
Right. And I'll pass this over to Clevis, if you don't mind me building on what Smooth was saying there. Is I'm actually not a top-down thinker at all. I'm not an authoritarian kind of guy. I'm actually a very macro. I don't micromanage at all. I just let people do what they need to do, right? So, I've been working IT corporate jobs for close to 15 years now. And the one thing about management is what you want to do as a manager or an administrator is find the people who are super productive and just let them be productive. Because usually there's bureaucracies or corporate policies or there's things that are preventing them from being hyper productive. And really your job as a guild master or raid leader or an administrator in a guild is whatever's holding your players back. You need to just get rid of those barriers and just let them flow. If something's slowing down DPS, if something's slowing down performance, if you got things in the way, you got to get rid of all that stuff. Like we don't even do loot council. We don't do DKP economies. I created a new loot system just for speed and efficiency.
Well, I've been dying to ask you about that. So if you're okay with talking about it, I don't know if it's sort of a company secret or anything, but what loot system do you use? Tell us about the tweaks that you've made.
I'll pass it over to Clevis because I invented the system and Clevis picked up on it really.
Oh, fantastic. Clevis, go for it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, let me just build a little bit before I think this kind of flows in here. I just want to attest to what Faye was saying there is that, and again, not to kind of dump on other traditional or more traditional guilds, but I think WoW, Vanilla WoW in particular, really sort of breeds a sort of more authoritarian type group, more militaristic might be the way I'd put it, where you have, your leaders and your commanders and you got your soldiers. And that's not really how Onslaught has done things. I don't necessarily know that is a cause of any of our success, but it's definitely just been the way that we've always done things. And really we've tried to kind of get out of the way of the best players. We in this channel in this call are not the best players in our guild, and we recognize that, and we are here to facilitate the best players to play to their best. Now, to build into the loot system is we sort of have a couple of goals in Onslaught, and as Faye mentioned, one of those is speed. We like to do speed runs. We iterate on our kills to make sure that they get faster and faster, so the runs get faster and faster every week. And it's important that if that's your mindset, that you have a loot system that facilitates that. So that was sort of one of the criteria. You need to make sure that we can loot everything really quickly and get all that over and done with. And the second piece of it was that we don't want an authoritarian type of system. So we don't want to run a loot council. Loot councils are all, there's always some amount of corruption or some amount of just injecting yourself into the system, and you're always going to make a mistake, right? And there's always going to be drama, and we just didn't have time for that, to be quite frank. We just wanted to get back to the business of raiding and not worry about that stuff. So loot council off the table causes too much drama. DKP off the table takes too long. Had to come up with something else. We have what we call a loot list system. It's basically a wish list. You put out what loot you want, and you assign values to it. We adjust those values based on metrics that you're applying yourself to the guild, and that kind of puts out a priority list for who's essentially going to get what item. You know who's going to get what item in advance. We can handle the loot immediately as soon as the boss dies. And interestingly enough, with the announcement that we just got from WoW Classic very recently from Kyvax on the forums, we're going to have loot trading in raids. I know the announcement was that we're not going to get it in 5-mans. But I'm looking forward to this a lot. We actually haven't had too much time to even talk about this because it's been so recent. But loot trading in raids is great for this type of system because you can just loot everything immediately. And so long as your raid doesn't take 2 hours, you can handle the loot at the end. Or, partway through if you're going to take over 2 hours, that sort of thing. So I think this facilitates a great quality of life change for us at least.
It's a really good point, and something I hadn't considered, obviously, for your more skilled guilds who, as you say, might be rolling through Molten Core in, God, I don't know, what is it? You guys do it in 25, 30 minutes, and then you can just sit down when all the dust is settled and distribute things afterwards.
Right. Well, on Chronos, one of the things about Chronos that I love about Chronos, and to be honest, I'm not really a Chronos loyalist, but I will suck their dick over their metric systems or the Nost core servers. You have to use realm players to have your tracking, your DPS and your kill times, etc. You're clear. Chronos did that on the server side, which was really nice. And so just trying to get, a Molten Core down from 20 minutes down to 19, not 18 and a half. Let's get it down to zone in till Rag's dead. Let's get it down to 17 minutes, etc. It really was just about getting that loot. Like everyone needs to know where the loot's going. And so, just to back up a little bit, I started with, I asked the questions like, what's the worst thing about World of Warcraft? It's dealing with people. It's the drama. It's the loot. It's handing out the loot. Everyone quits. Like you're going to lose, most guilds lose 90% of the people that they do lose. They lose because of some kind of loot drama, right? And so if I can eliminate that, I can keep those resources in the guild. I can maintain the guild's equity by keeping those purples within the guild. The whole purpose of the loot system, and I'm proud to say in the 4.5 years we raided on K1, we lost exactly 0 people's loot, and we had exactly 0 instances of loot drama because we had it on a spreadsheet, and everyone, before they even stepped into the raid, they consented. They saw where the loot standings were. There's certain regulations and rules we have, like hunters can't, bid for or put Drake Fang high on their list, etc. It's a tank priority and then a rogue warrior. And so just having that list already there, and the master leader would just alt tab, check who got the item and send it to that guy. And it facilitated speed and reduced drama and increased transparency.
It's a really interesting point, and honestly something I sort of hadn't considered in that wording, but obviously it makes sense when you say the players are the best and the worst part of World of Warcraft. Everyone sort of reveres this community behind the game and how amazing it is to play with the friends that we make and what have you. But obviously any of the problems that arise through the playing of the game are, 99% of the time, player generated. It's not necessarily our issues with what's coming up in the environment. It's us. It's the human element of having other people mess with your experience. So that's definitely an interesting way to put it. Faye, I'm just sort of trying to do the maths here because it is something that intrigues me, this week one RAG goal of yours, because as I said, that, and I know it's going by what it was years ago, but we've got that world record to 60 of 4 days, 20 hours, and whether or not that's going to be beaten or not in Classic, we will come to find. But going by that record as a gauge, 4 days, 20 hours of slash time played, generally, depending on how much sleep you're getting per day, is really going to push you right up against that 1 week time limit. So is it the fact that you're hoping you guys get 40 people that just sneak it in by the end of that week, first week? Because I'm guessing it's going to be pretty fucking tight.
Right. My initial expectations were 25 dudes in green gear getting into Molten Core and then struggling the whole way. But amazingly, through networking, we've tripled, maybe even quadrupled the size of the guild within the recent past few months. And the amount of people that are going, I'm going 20, I'm going 24, I'm not sleeping for 48, 72 hours, etc., is mind blowing. As far as breaking the Joanna record, I don't want to reveal to the cards in our hands or even telegraph the deck we're playing, but I will say this is, like I said, I've spent the past 8 months just 12 to 16 hours a day. I go to work, I do my work orders, I do what I need to do, and then I'll spend 10 hours straight at work just going through spreadsheets. And I've leveled, God knows, 15, 20 shamans now to 60 on various private servers and on other, private test things, that we've set up. So what really keeps me excited is just innovating. A lot of Chronos was, not really a dramatic server, and it got a lot less eyes than the Nostalrius, Elysium, Core, etc. In the entire time K1 existed, Nostalrius came and went, Elysium came and went, Light's Hope came to prominence. K1 was just a kind of a rock solid thing. And I don't think the guilds on the Chronos server really got the recognition, that they deserve, especially guilds like Saint, and Vanguard. The amount of innovation, I know we push a lot of innovation. To be honest though, there was a kind of an arms race. We were always watching what Saint was doing. We were always watching what Vanguard was doing, and they deserve a lot more credit in the private community scene than they deserve, or than they got. Because there's some absolute insane strategies that have been executed by those. And so I don't know. I just pushing speed runs and just coming up with new creative ways to get that faster Molten Core, to get that faster AQ, just all that kind of thing.
Well, I'll open this one up to the floor, guys. So anyone jump in first in, best dressed. You talked about those speed runs. Are you able to hit me with any of the times that you're particularly proud of? That some of your best records for any of these raids.
I think we still have a 16-second Veil Straz. I think that one still stands on K1.
Sorry, a 16-second what?
Veil Straz.
Veil Straz.
Yeah, I was very happy the first time we hit 30,000 raid DPS. It was obscene, and we were checking everyone on Realm players, and you really can't compare different pre-servers. They all have different armor values. The Chronos one has the armor values that are in the WoW Bestiary book, but the K3, one of the guys on K1 and Vanguard reverse engineered the armor by studying Bloodthirst and Crusader procs on old 2006 footage. And K3 is operating with what they believe is a Blizz-like armor value. But we did some really. My favorite was like a minute and a half Cthulhu Phase 1 and Phase 2 together. We were always just regularly pushing 30, 35 minute AQ40.
Now, I mean, some of these again, sorry, you guys might not know this, but I'm not a raider. That's something I'm trying to fix in Classic. I didn't raid at all, so I'm the biggest noob of it all when it comes to this stuff. But obviously through doing the show, I've come to learn a fair bit about raids, and I read a lot and I watch a lot, blah, blah, blah. But when you say something like, please do explain it to me like I was born yesterday. When you say something like a 16-second Velistraz kill, I'm sort of sitting here going like, holy shit, like I don't think I've heard of that before. Like, how is that possible? And if you can't talk about your tactics or what have you, I understand.
No, we'll talk about the tactics. Like everyone knows it, and people are doing it even better now. I guarantee you. We were getting a 16-second veil at the end of it. Like I mentioned earlier, the first time I was blown away. The first time we did 30,000 raid DPS, we peaked at 50,000 raid DPS. And just this week, a guild on Chronos 3 Vanguard did 50,000 raid DPS on Onyxia in BWO era guild. Gear. So there's definitely innovation still going on out there. But, Veil was known as a guild killer in 2005 because Veil, beginning at 45 seconds in, he detonates your main tank and then he just starts detonating the rest of your tanks, or the top person on aggro rather. And so I remember in 2014, 2015, I remember having a conversation with our main tank at the time going, I think we can get fast enough to where you don't die. If we can get sub 45 seconds Veil, you won't die. Think about it. And it's like, dude, and we were checking. No one was doing that. We were looking at what's going on in Nostalrius and stuff. And we kept pushing it. And I started telling shamans, like, start collecting DPS gear. Let's start moving people to Feral. Let's get more ults up. We need more warriors. We need more rogues. Like, let's do it. And we just kept trying to, like, if we get 45 seconds, all right, now we're at 40, and it just kept spiraling out of control. We kept getting more gear and more alts, and people kept getting better at the game. And next thing you know, people are kills are regular doing 30-second fails, and then 25 seconds was huge. And I remember 20 seconds, and just shaving a second off. I was like, okay, 17 is the record. Let's go for 16. What do we got to do? And I would just go through the combat log and just completely just chew through it and tear it down, and just like telling people, look, you did 6 bloodthirsts, this other guy did 5. Like,
all right. Well, I've just got one last question for you guys, and Faye, obviously you might have the best input on this one, but you other two guys feel free to add on anything that Faye might miss. But I'm sort of intrigued as to, if you guys are sort of pushing content, trying to be one of the top guilds out there doing your thing. Do you have a different outlook at all, or what's your personal take on your ultimate raid composition? Like, Faye, do you have a particular class that you kind of, maybe hold not a grudge against, but you don't value as much as perhaps some other guilds, or how do you like to do it?
It depends if you're looking at the micro versus the macro. Every class definitely has its place. Obviously, the Orthodoxy in 2014 was very much Alliance was the better faction for PvE. And like I said, I have 700/days played as Shaman at this point, in and out. And really, when you're talking about the differences between Horde and Alliance, it's really the differences between Horde, or between the Shaman and the Paladin. And granted, there's some differences with weapon skill. So Alliance guilds favor rank 14 more because they need more swords because of humans for their warriors and rogues, whereas Orcs have the axe option. So in the early days, you can spread your equity a little better with the gear you're getting, and then two-hand weapons are viable on Horde, where they're less viable on Alliance. So this really ends up, I was always saying that Horde has the higher ceiling. On average, your Alliance guilds are going to way outperform Horde guilds. But if you can hit the ceiling on Horde, or get closer to it above what the Alliance can do. And so I was always pushing warriors and rogues. And so it tends to end up looking in the very high tier rating as warriors being king. Which kind of hurts Warlock, Mage, and Hunter, and some of the other classes. But it doesn't mean there's still no utility or viability in those classes. Try doing a Kel'Thuzad with 30 warriors. It's going to be impossible. You have to have.
Look, guys, I've sort of kept you twice as long as I said I would. I tend to do that. I do apologize, but I'll wrap it up there. And I just want to say, I wish you all the best of luck with chasing these goals in Classic. And, by all means, if you guys happen to hit your goal of your week 1 rag, I'd love to chat to you later down the track. If you happen to get there, that'd be a great thing to sort of discuss about how it went down if you do hit it. But let me thank you all so much for being on here again. Obviously, Clevis, thanks, mate. I really appreciate you going back and forth with me and helping us set this up.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you having us. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And, sorry, maybe just a quick shout out to Ale. Thanks again for getting us together here.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to Ale. I'm glad he pointed me in your guys' direction. Faye, thanks so much, mate. You've been very, very, concise in your points, and I think you've put forward some really good points, obviously letting people know a bit more about Onslaught and just, maybe more, some general perspectives on WoW as well. So thanks for that.
Oh, no, thank you. Onslaught-WoW.com if people are looking for a Horde NA guild. We have a lot of Europeans that are playing with us too. We're going to be on the East Coast, NA East Coast server. They're getting 80 to 120 MS on that server, which is great. I mean, we're used to playing on K1 where we're running 200 MS plus. And, if people are homeless looking for, they want to be a part of that. They want to push a week 1 rag kill, be a part of that. I mean, we're still shopping for people. So.
No, definitely. And sorry, I was remiss to leave that out. Thanks so much for reminding me. You guys plug away. If anyone is of the more hardcore persuasion, obviously it's very different from what the Countdown to Classic Guild's going to be doing. Please give these guys a yell if you're intrigued, if you feel like what they're saying is right up your alley. Cleaver, sorry, I should give you a chance, man. Anything you want to plug? Are you anywhere on YouTube or on Twitch or anything like that?
No, we're good. We're going to have a bunch of people streaming from Onslaught right from the early days. So you can just watch the website there. We'll have plenty of links through. You can follow Onslaught along as we either succeed or fail spectacularly.
Too easy. Faye.
I want to plug something for Clevis. He is the guy at 2017 and 2018 BlizzCon that asked the only relevant questions regarding Classic WoW. If you guys want to look up.
Which one was that? Which question did he ask?
So 2017, I got to ask, J. Allen Brack. Oh, how did my question even go? He responded with the, UBRS I got to ask him if he was going to fix bugs in Classic WoW right after the announcement. And he responded with the infamous, UBRS as a 5-man instance. And then in 2018, I was lucky enough to ask a question again. I was about 4 or 5 people back from Chris Metzen. And I got to ask about server caps and population concerns, and that was where Ian had talked about sharding, and we got the kind of sharding conversation started off. So,
very good, very good.
I like to go to BlizzCon and do what I can for the Classic community.
Very good, man. And finally, Smooth. Obviously, I mean, feel free to plug away, man. Obviously, you're very popular on YouTube, but tell us about what's in the works with you lately.
Man, I just want to further iterate. If you're looking to be dedicated and you want to go hard and, be with a lot of other dudes who are going at it, I mean, check out Onslaught. It's a cool community. There are a lot of, really cool people. I mean, there are a lot of dedicated, intense people, but it's a nice mix. So yeah, check out onslaught-wow.com.
No. What you should actually do is go to YouTube and type in Smooth McGroove and watch that, or check out Smooth's drumming streams. He'll drum to video game music, rock music, whatever. That's some killer stuff.
Yeah, I can get behind that. Smooth. Again, as I said, it took me by surprise to have you in on this call. I had no idea. And I'll shout out your YouTube channel for you. I appreciate sort of being a bit humble in that regard. But for God's sakes, people, if you haven't heard of Smooth McGroove's YouTube channel, go and check it out. Throw him a sub and watch his stuff. It's absolutely impeccable. And I have a really good time over at his channel. So thanks again for being here, Smooth. And thanks everyone. I'll let you all go and I'll talk to you next time.
Appreciate it, boss. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's the show for today, everyone. But please be sure to tune in next week as we have more calls and more countdown for you. But before we go, let's go through some thank yous, and a big thank you as always to patrons. Aero PC, Anti, Binger, Brandon K, Cascade, Chunky Dunk, Connor C, Damien A, Dave K, David F, DJ M, Eric L, Herbert, James S, Jamie S, Jeff J, John HC, Josh W, Minoru, Randall H, Rasmus S, Rarebit, Rick S, Ryan K, Schmig A, Sylvia K, Tim B, Tim S, Torbjorn C, Voikora, and Zudamos. And of course, the very dedicated patrons of Countdown to Classic. An extra special shout out, as always, and a thank you from the bottom of my heart to Alice R, Billy C, Eric S, Firespit Kitten, Flosy B, Batlord, Carl W, Nick B, Palfurus, Tsunami, The Anton, Wilson Ma, and Velarco. Thank you so much for your phenomenal support of the show. Countdown to Classic would not be the same without your support. So that's it for today, everyone. We made it through 100. Thank you so much for your support again. Have a great rest of the week. I'll see you next week.